here's fun. You are the way you are. You're here. That's all that matters. Being here is all that matters. This is the best I get. I don't do that anymore. Too old.
Well, what, Richard?
Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Oh, yeah.
That's Sean, yeah.
I never see your wife. It's like you hide.
No, she works. A lot. Yeah, I mean, they're...
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 24, 2019 Westminster City Council meeting. As we do with each of our meetings, we start the opening with a Pledge of Allegiance. For your benefit, for those of you standing, there are flags in both the front and the back of the room. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point, I will ask you if you have a cell phone in your pocket like I do, please make sure it's on vibrate or turned off. Ms. Parker, would you take the roll, please?
Atchison.
Here.
DeMott.
Here.
Haney.
Here.
Mankey.
Here.
Seitz.
Here.
Scully. Here. Vols.
Here. Ladies and gentlemen of the council, before you are the minutes of the June 10th, 2019 meeting, and I accept the motion at this time. Ms. Seitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council approve the minutes of the regular meeting of June 10th, 2019 as presented.
Mr. DeMott?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. Moving on to the next item. Ladies and gentlemen, we have approximately 4 presentations to start tonight. Ms. Haney, would you start with our first one, please?
I understand that we have some people here from Stanley Lake High School. Would you like to come forward? No. Good to see you, Rick. It has been a couple of years. Yeah. Please come up and join me. And while you're joining me up here, we have 18 of, excuse me, turn around. 18 of our staff that participated in the Stanley Lake Capstone projects with their students. So those of you that were part of that capstone project that are staff, would you mind joining me up here? Because this is really for you. And for those of you that are not aware of this program, I think it's the second year that the city has been involved in the program, and it's working with students to sort of help them think about career pathways and shadowing our individual, out of the way so you can see them, our individual staff members, and it really fits in with the vision of the city, the inclusiveness, the building of the next workforce, and help students see what is the next pathways for themselves. I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you very much,
You're
Michelle.
very welcome. Oh my, here we go.
So, my wife, Barb Casey, and I are involved with a volunteer group with Purpose-Driven Optimists. One of our missions is to help young people. And we had an opportunity to work with Stanley Lake High School. Their capstone English project was to have students discover, research, explore careers after high school. And we, with great participation on the part of city volunteers as well as members of the community, we managed to have panels for every single class, of anywhere from 3 to 7 individuals who talked about their own journeys from high school to their current careers. We also led workshops on writing resumes, business ethics, interviewing, and other important topics. And then they helped students with mock interviews as well as job shadowing. So it was quite an effort. The city employees probably filled half the slots that we had. We certainly could not have been nearly as successful as what we were without their help. It's our hope by making a small token of appreciation that they'll join us next year and help continue and expand this program. We have, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. One of the students, Carson Casey, was one of the seniors that participated in this. I would ask him to say a few words, but he will turn beet red. Hard to do for Nathan, but he would do it. But, and by the way, I've had 3 sons who've worked for the city of Westminster, so thank you very much. I do have one more.
Seasonal.
Just very briefly, I want to read off the names of the 18 volunteers. Emily Littlejohn, Chuck Scavo, Angelica McMahon, Karen Leafield, Tammy Thompson, Donna Diaz, Martha Hines, Kira Klossner, Drew Smith, Andrew Sugg, should have brought my glasses, Southern, Caitlin Susta, Dan
Shandamar.
Thank you. Nicole Anthony, Erickson, Jason Denick, James McDonald, Michelle Parker, and Sherry Young. Thank you. And the class of Stanley Lake 2019, they are the proud Gators of Stanley Lake. This is a poster that of as many students as we could find signed. There were 150 who participated and benefited from this program. And so we are going to present it to the volunteers.
I think you all should receive it. I'll take a picture. Yes, please come out. Stand in front of us. We don't want to be in front. Get up here with me. Get up here with me. That was good, Victor. Thank you. Good to see you. Mark, nice to see you. I know, I was going to say, I do remember you. And good to meet you. Thank you all very, very much for your work. Appreciate that. You're going to hang that somewhere, right?
All right, Ms. Scully, if you would do our next item, please.
Yeah, where do you want it? I will bring it back. Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. I'm going to start out with a poem by Emma Lazarus. In 1883, she wrote The New Colossus, which these are the words that are on our Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempted tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. June is Immigrant Heritage Month. I would like to take a minute to ask our inclusivity board members to come forward and stand with me on the dais. Some of them are out in the hall. Good make it. And then, if you are an immigrant of our country, come and stand with us on the dais tonight, if you're willing. And then, oh, thank you. Thank you. And then, if you are a descendant of an immigrant to this country, would you stand in place?
She's representing the audio.
Thank you for partaking in my little exercise, because what I wanted us all to realize is we have all come to these shores, not as original residents of this country, but people who were seeking a new life. So, Immigrant Heritage Month is a recognition of our commitment to creating a welcoming and inclusive community during the month of June. Since June 2014, Immigrant Heritage Month has given people across the United States an opportunity to annually explore their own heritage and celebrate the shared diversity that forms the unique story of America. The City of Westminster is home to diverse communities, including immigrants from Mexico, refugees from Laos, and many other cultures and identities. The city has been and will continue to be committed to the public safety, health, and quality of life of all residents, regardless of race, immigration status, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, religion, national origin, age, or physical or mental ability. We have many residents in Westminster that have journeyed here from distant places and contributed greatly to our community. When the Westminster City Council joined Welcoming America in September 2016 as part of the Welcoming Cities and Counties initiative, the city committed to institutionalizing strategies ensuring the ongoing inclusion and long-term economic and social integration of newcomers. Recognizing the city's community and acknowledging Immigrant Heritage Month supports the city's strategic plan goal of vibrant, inclusive, and engaged community. So, Nushin, you are an immigrant to our country, and you are an immigrant. Your name is?
Shireen.
Shireen, it's very nice to meet you. And you are on our Inclusivity Board. Thank you very much for joining us up here tonight. Would each one of you just introduce yourself, and if you have anything you'd like to share with us tonight, please feel free.
I'm Seth McGinnis. I'm a resident of Westminster. My ancestors immigrated to the U.S. long enough ago that I'm not sure exactly when it was, but like almost all of us here, I'm a descendant of immigrants. So,
you want to share something?
What do you want me to share?
You can share anything. Your happiness to be here, your success of coming here, maybe a little bit about your journey. Where are you from?
Yes, I'm from the same country. Good evening, everybody. Same country as Nushin. I'm from Iran. I was born in Iran, United States naturalized citizen. Went to high school in Colorado, Aurora Central High School, and Colorado School of Mines for my undergrad degree in electrical engineering, and my master's at University of Colorado at Boulder. And right now I'm doing research in renewable energy and sustainable power electronics.
Wow, welcome, and we need to hire her. Just saying.
Nushin, agreed. Hello everyone, I'm Nushin Parjadi. I'm on the Inclusivity Board with Seth and many other wonderful people here. Is our liaison. Yes, I'm also an immigrant, have lived in the States for 40 years. Actually, we migrated to the U.S. on July 4th, 1979. And I thought that all the fireworks, when I was sleeping, I thought all the fireworks were bombs that were going on or, shots being fired. So that's how it was getting out of my old country. So I'm very proud and very happy to be here. I'm a very proud Iranian American. We own a medical clinic. We employ over 25 people here in Westminster. We employ various contractors and surgeons. We are a reference point within the veterinary industry, as you would say. A lot of hard-to-diagnose diseases are sent to us from all over Denver Metro and Boulder Metro, even some mountain areas. So we are very proud to be of service here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I know that sometimes that can be very challenging in front of a very big crowd. And I, like you, my family has been here for quite some time, but I am descended from Polish and Italian immigrants to our country, and I still celebrate the traditions of both my Polish and Italian ancestors. And I also travel to my home country of Italy often. Whereas generations of immigrants from every corner of the globe have built our country's economy and created the unique character of our nation, and whereas the City of Westminster recognizes its rich history of immigrants who have played a vital role in diversifying our community, immigration is built in the foundation of this great nation. It is a source of the strength we hold and something we should all take pride in. And whereas the City of Westminster is home to diverse communities, including immigrants from Mexico, refugees from Laos, and many other cultures and identities, And whereas the entrepreneurial drive and spirit of our country is fueled by the unique origins of Americans, and whereas immigrants are an important part of Westminster's history and continue to contribute to the economy, science, academia, culture, and the arts, and whereas immigrants have been tireless leaders not only in securing their own rights and access to equal opportunity, but also have campaigned to create a fairer and more just society of all Americans. And whereas despite these countless contributions, the role of immigrants in building and enriching our nation has frequently been overlooked and undervalued throughout history, which continues to the present day. And whereas Westminster's immigrant population adds to the variety of languages, customs, and celebrations which contribute to the cultural diversity enjoyed in the city, now therefore I, Herb Atchison, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, do hereby proclaim June 2019 to be Immigrant Heritage Month in the City of Westminster, and call upon the people of Westminster to join together to build stronger connections to our neighbors and fellow community members across the city in the spirit of our history. Signed this day, 24th of June 2019, Mayor Herb Atchison. Thank you. So much. Let's be in the middle.
Okay, Mr. DeMont.
Join me? Anybody you want to bring with you? Which looks like I might have a whole mob on my hand.
Take off the back. You're all giants. Dylan, you're smart. You're so short.
I'm going to let you introduce your family.
Not by our nicknames, by our real names.
That's fair enough. I see a lot of friends here. So Linda Charrington is a longtime resident who lived in the city since 1948, who passed away last October. She was very instrumental in our historical society. I see a lot of the members here. People affectionately knew her as the history lady. I knew her as a friend. Very, very obviously someone who touched her community by the show of people who are here today. So we thought that it would be appropriate for somebody who's given so much back to this city that we went and rejoiced her life with her family. So that's what you are all doing here today. Would you like to say anything?
No, this is a great honor for my mom. Many years she has spent trying to preserve local history and making sure that there was somewhere where it could be put and placed and utilized. Many different buildings in the Historical Society. If you don't know where there are, it's on the Westminster map. You should check it out. You should be very happy.
I agree. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas Linda Charrington was a lifelong resident of the city of Westminster, making its history the object of research since 1952, and had been involved in the Westminster Historical Society since its inception in 1962, serving on the board and as its president and vice president. And whereas Linda Charrington served on the City of Westminster Historic Landmark Board since 2004, was awarded the Mary Chancho Award for Outstanding Service as a volunteer in 2006, and was the honoree at the annual Hometown Christmas tree lighting in 2015. And whereas Linda Charrington actively served the community of Westminster as the Westminster History 101 teacher for several years, and gave school lectures to students of the Westminster Public Schools, and whereas Linda Charrington consistently published the monthly newsletter of the Westminster Historical Society, Historically Speaking, from its first publication, and whereas Linda Charrington was instrumental in placing the local buildings on the National Register of Historic Places, erecting historic statues honoring Jim Baker and Westminster volunteer firemen, And whereas Linda Charrington authored 6 books about Westminster history and was quoted in books written by local authors, and whereas Linda Charrington has had a local park at Bradburn Village named in her honor, now therefore I, Herb Atchison, Mayor of the City of Westminster, on behalf of the entire City Council and staff, do hereby proclaim and call upon the people of Westminster to celebrate the life of Linda Charrington, signed this 24th day of June 2019, Herb Atchison, Mayor of Westminster. This is for you, and I very much appreciate all that your mom did for us and you guys being here to celebrate her with us.
How are we going to do this?
Jody, you're the master here.
Stand up on the step.
We all back up? I heard the instructions earlier.
Al, come in.
Okay.
More shorter person.
But you like me.
I do like it. No, this is Grandma's. You get copies. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Ms. Hitchens, come on down. Bring your crew with you, please.
We have a lot of history, but not that much.
Okay. So a question for you. How many of you do the finances at home? Yeah, it's okay. My wife does mine. I know better than to mess with it. Well, imagine doing that for the city. Don't make an accounting error. Because it's big dollars. So as Tammy and her team that are up here tonight, this is only a portion of them, they just started to figure out how to do finance reporting. This is only the 35th year that they've got this award of excellence, of making sure that we stay where we're at, we stay out of financial trouble, and we do all the reporting that we're supposed to be doing in a manner that can be audited easily. And we just had our annual audit report presented to us last week in a study session. Again, no findings. And that is a huge undertaking to go through the audit for the amount of time that they went through all of our books and could find nothing to report. That was bad. All the good stuff they told us about. But we want to recognize Tammy and her team tonight. Again, 35 years of this award. And it's a certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. And Tammy, I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
And then I'll let you tell everybody what it is.
Okay, all right. So each year, the finance department, the accounting team led by accounting manager Sherry Sanchez over at the end, we submit our report to the Government Finance Office Association. They have a special review committee that then will review it to make sure that we're disclosing the information correctly, that we have an unmodified opinion, which indicates that the audit presents the finances of the city appropriately, and anyway, and that there's a spirit of full disclosure. So this team, and I will let them introduce themselves, was some of the primary folks behind that this year. They do an awesome job every year. They make my job easy. So really, this award belongs to them.
I'm Sherry Sanchez. I'm the accountant. Sherry Young, financial analyst.
Gary Newcomb, accountant.
John Cartier, accountant.
Nobody.
Tammy Hitchens, finance director.
Karen Krager, finance administrator.
Lori Nusser, accountant.
So anyway, these are the guys that earn this, not me. So
Like me.
So.
Congratulations. gonna stand up tall.
I don't ever get to be held up tall.
Got them all in? I knew it broke it in a second. Thanks again. Thank you, man. Thanks, Sherry. If any of you that were here for presentations want to try to escape, this is your opportunity. Those of you that haven't been here before for public comment, this is a period where you allow anybody to come to the podium. They have up to 5 minutes to speak on any subject they want. This is not a two-way conversation. It is us listening to you. We don't respond, but everything you say is recorded, and if there's a response due back to you based on the question you left on the recording, the information you had either here on the sign-up sheet or on the recording that we'll take from you will be responded to by staff probably sometime starting on Wednesday. But again, this is a one-way conversation from you to us. Again, if you are here for the St. Mark's hearing, and if I call your name in this first round, just tell me you're St. Mark's, and I'll skip you and we'll come back to you, because the public hearing for St. Mark's is later on in the agenda. This is for something other than St. Mark's. When your time starts, if I call your name, come up. It will start when the green light comes on. You have up to 5 minutes. When you have 1 minute left, it will turn yellow, and when your time is up, it'll turn red, and then we ask you to stop. We do not allow any kind of electronic transmissions or recordings to be played, nor any kind of posters or signs to be displayed. So at this time, Lorraine Sherry, St. Mark's, okay, thank you. James Hensinger, I see you're at St. Mark's as well. Okay. Lynn Yoder, St. Mark's, okay. Roger Meredith, St. Mark's, okay. I am about to butcher this one. Dan Fraducci? St. Mark's, okay. I should have asked if there was anybody here not for St. Mark's. Sam Chrisman? Okay. Okay, and you're St. Mark's also, Dan? Reverend, you're here for St. Mark's, I presume? Okay. How about Mark Whitney? Okay. David Truitt? Okay. Kevin Work, I know you're not here for St. Mark's.
Hello, council members, mayor. Just again, giving you guys another update. It's been another 2 weeks about Stanley Lake and the boating. Again, unfortunate, I have zero update from the last 2 weeks. Nothing has happened. There's still 103 days left of the season. It's been 115 days since the season has been canceled and since we started all these solutions. We've presented 2 solutions that are tamper evident to the city. We've heard zero feedback on any one of them. One can be implemented today. Nothing. We're still waiting to see these tags. We have nothing to show you guys. Nothing's been brought back to us. The other solution would take about 8 months to get implemented if we started today. And again, we have nothing, no feedback on that. There's been 0 task force meetings in the month of June. We were doing good there, having a meeting every week, then every other week, and nothing this entire month. So no new news from the task force. There's been 1 subcommittee meeting about tagging, and it was again, no tags were presented, nothing has happened since then. So that's pretty much it. I guess it's pretty slim tonight. So trying to keep the hopes high with everybody. We're trying not to bring 30 people with us every week like we were. Trying to just get the consolidated census from the group and just come and present to you guys. But it seems like that may be slowing you guys down. Maybe we need to bring people to show that it's still out there. We're still trying to solve this and still want some feedback and trying to help the city make Westminster quality of life good or better than no boats. So I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks, and thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Terry?
Thanks, Council, Mayor. I'm just batting cleanup here for Kevin. Update from Friends of Stanley Lake. I think Kevin covered pretty well. June was a little bit of a disappointing month. We didn't do much. We had a couple of subcommittee meetings. I think there's a solution that's been now drafted up by the head ranger that I think is scheduled to go in front of some of the city leaders so that they can be given a blessing that we can carry forward with that. I'll make a suggestion on that here at the end. The one thing that I will mention, we're approaching 500 members now on the Friends of Stanley Lake website. I continue to approve people every single day. I don't know how these people are now getting excited, but the need to deal with the wants and desires of the recreational community, I think is real. It's not going to die down. It's not going away. A lot of us are committed, and as Kevin said, I don't think the way to do that is to destroy you guys' Monday night. It's not our intent. We're going to give you guys honest updates. Hopefully that's appreciated. But I will also tell you, if we don't believe that our efforts and our desires are being heard, we're going to ratchet that up. Okay? If we need to increase visibility, we're going to do it. The city news hasn't been covered now in a month and a half. That's only because we haven't reached out. Okay? You can start to expect that if we continue to hear nothing, we are going to start reaching out. We're going to start doing friendly protests. I want to make sure that the city of Westminster, all our residents, know what's going on and know that they're being heard. I think that's fair to the community, and it's also fair to those of us who have kind of got shafted in this deal. One note that I didn't bring up the last time I was up here, 24 people were supposedly guilty. Never heard anything about them. Their tickets are gone off public record. I don't really care who they are. The one thing I will tell you is there were 500 plus people on that lake that were not guilty, and we've all been punished. That's what's happened. Okay? And that's a real deal. I get city water quality, etc. We have an honest responsibility to those 500 people to give them updates on where we're at for this year. I think that was done. I thought the way it was done was a little backhanded, but we did get an update. Now for 2020, what we really need here, guys, is a commitment that the city's going to take the proposals in their hand, and they are 100% behind executing them, making them work. Not, oh, I can't do it. I don't want to find the next roadblock. That's what we've been trying to do all along in these subcommittee meetings. Find the roadblocks, break them down. Now we've sat on nothing, no updates for over a month, which I think, let's get in there and find if there's any more roadblocks. Or let's say we're committed to doing this for 2020. I know personally 3 people who sold their houses, moved out of Westminster because of what's happened here. I only know 3. I'm pretty sure there are more. I'm pretty sure that if we don't get a commitment out to those residents, you're going to see more than that. And if you want visibility to those, I'll help you with that. All right? That's a pretty easy deal. The speed that we are going is scary. It's 9 months till next February. If we aren't doing stuff month by month now, we won't hit next February to execute a new boating plan. Okay? So we expect updates in July. We expected some in June. We didn't get any. Okay, so that's what I'm here to kind of give an update on. We're going to continue to do this in the right way. And honestly, I believe everyone who's in the Friends of Stanley Lake community, all the boating community, they're all doing the right things. Honestly, I think city water quality is doing the right thing, and city management's doing the right thing. We need to work together, but we need to work at a speed that will get us to where we want to be in a committed way to get 2020 to happen. So what I'm asking for and what I'd recommend that we really focus on is let's get these task committees spun back up and let's get a commitment from the city staff saying we are going to execute a plan. You don't have to be detailed down to the nth degree. We will work through anything that comes between A and B to get there. I think that's what needs to happen, and hopefully we can relay that in our updates. Thanks for letting me speak. Appreciate it.
Robert Tobin.
I'm still not exercising or shaving.
Okay. Robert Tobin. Okay. Is there anyone else who has a public comment they'd like to make on something other than St. Mark's? Next item on the agenda is a report of city officials. Mr. Tripp, will you go ahead with yours?
I have no report tonight. I'm going to save time for the lengthy agenda that we have this evening.
Okay. Council, any items from you tonight? Ms. Sight?
I will also be brief because I want to make sure that everybody feels that their voice was heard in a timely manner. I do want to alert the public to 2 opportunities to participate with the community this week. Tomorrow night, there is a Renewable Energy 101 workshop that is at the City of Westminster and Excel Energy are hosting, and it's going to be at City Park Rec Center from 6:30 to 8. So if you've been interested in renewable energy, but you're not quite sure you want to put solar panels on your roof, you want to see what the range of options are and kind of demystify the whole thing, please attend. There will be snacks provided. You can go on our website and RSVP if you're interested in attending. The next opportunity to participate in the community is our Harris Park Plan Community Workshop. So Harris Park, most of you know it in our historic Westminster area, right there on 73rd, in between Lowell and Bradburn, wanting to kind of envision where does our community see that area developing, how do we retain the character and add vibrancy. So that's from 6 to 8 at the MAC, and I definitely encourage all of you to attend and participate, particularly if you live in that area. I'll let it end at that, but I do want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight for caring about your community and wanting to have your voice heard.
Other comments from council? Mr. DeMont?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I briefly want to just remind everybody that the city has one heck of a 4th of July party on the 4th of July at City Park. So that starts at 4 o'clock and fireworks are 9:15, a lot of beer and food and fun. So hopefully we'll see some of you out there.
Other comments from council? And kind of follow up with what Ms. Gully said is we do have a large festival down at the TOD station, Trans-Authority Development Station down at 71st and Irving on July the 20th from 11 to 8 is our typical, what we call our Latino festival. And there's a whole lot more than just the Latino group down there. So please come down and enjoy the festival. We have people planning to come in, since it's at the TOD station, all the way from Denver and South Denver to come up for the event using the commuter rail services that we have there. So please stop by, enjoy your day, and hopefully by July the 20th, we'll be out of the snowstorms. I'm not sure, but since some of the mountain areas this past weekend got over a foot, we may see well getting snow here in Denver. With that, any other comments from council?
For those attending that were wondering when the next Stanley Lake Task Force meeting is, I just want to let you know there is one that is scheduled for this Thursday, and that is posted on our website. So just wanted to make sure you were aware.
All right, any other comments? Ms. Gully, did you have nothing? No. All right, the next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. This is a group of routine matters that we act on with a single motion. We have reviewed these at the pre-meeting. No member of council has asked that these be removed and voted on separately. So at this point, I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda, and that would be Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt the consent agenda items 8A through 8F.
Mr. DeMont?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. If you would, please, all those voting, so with your lights, please. Motion carried on a 7-0 vote. Next item up is a Opening of a public hearing regarding St. Mark Village Comp Plan Amendment. All right, staff, you guys want to start us off with?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Westminster City Council. My name is David Gurman. I am a senior planner with the city's planning division. It is my pleasure to be presenting to all of you this evening. St. Charles Town Company, the developer of a 6-acre parcel located at the northwest corner of 72nd Avenue and Federal Boulevard, has made application to the city to amend the comprehensive plan designation for this property. This requested amendment is being done to support the future development of the site as an affordable apartment development to be known as St. Mark Village. As an ancillary part of this application, the owners of the adjacent Wishbone Restaurant property have also applied for a comprehensive plan amendment. Additionally, the City of Westminster is introducing an amendment for the adjacent elevated water tower property immediately to the west of the St. Mark Village site. The elements of this amendment will be introduced and discussed at our meeting this evening. As a part of this effort, a staff agenda memo has been created, and tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. The agenda memo, its associated attachments, and the public notices mailed, posted, and published in the Denver Post are hereby entered into the public record at this time. Here's a detailed map of the property locations, which are outlined in yellow. North Park subdivision is located to the north. The existing elevated water tower, commonly referred to by city employees as the hydro pillar, is located to the west. And of course, the new one is going up immediately between that and the St. Mark Village site. St. Mark Church is located to the to the south, and sure what that's about. Federal Boulevard marks the boundary between the City of Westminster and the City of Federal Heights to the east. The St. Mark Village property owner is requesting a comprehensive plan designation amendment from mixed use to R36 residential, while the current mixed use designation would allow for 36 dwelling units per acre density needed for their envisioned project. The developer does not have the capacity to develop other types of uses on the property as would be required by the mixed use designation. The owners of the Wishbone property recognize that redesignating their property from mixed use to retail commercial is a better match for their business. The city supports this change because the retail commercial designation supports a much less intensive use of this property. Finally, the city achieves a more appropriate designation for the land upon which the new elevated water tower will stand by redesignating its site to public, quasi-public. The proposed R36 development in this location is consistent with the vision and intention of the comprehensive plan, as the density achievable with the current mixed-use designation is unchanged at 36 dwelling units, or DU, per acre with the proposed R36 designation. The proposed rezoning supports the substantial public purpose of facilitating the provision of additional affordable housing units within the city. The proposed switch from mixed use to R36 results in the same allowable density of 36 dwelling units per acre. There are no conditions or errors that necessitate the proposed changes in the comprehensive plan land use designations. The proposed development of this property shall continue to support the orderly physical growth of the city. Resources are available to support the new project. The proposed rezoning supports the substantial public purpose of facilitating the provision of additional affordable housing units within the city. Staff does not find any uncharacteristically unique features or parameters that surround the subject parcel. No objections or concerns have been raised by any city departments or divisions. No objections or concerns have been raised by any outside referral agencies. There are no known environmental impacts expected from the development of the site, and no known environmental risks or hazards located on the site. Staff recommends holding a public hearing to review this proposal, as we're doing tonight, and that the City Council recommend approval based on the finding that this application meets all of the criteria set forth in Section 11.521 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Finally, staff believes that this proposed comprehensive plan amendment, if approved, will facilitate the development of affordable housing, which supports both the visionary leadership, effective governance, and proactive regional collaboration, and the vibrant, inclusive, and engaged community city strategic plan goals. Thank you for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Councilors, any questions of staff on this report? Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to be clear, make sure I understand this accurately. Changing from mixed use to R36 does not change the proposed density of the residential component from what was in the existing comprehensive plan that was approved by the previous city council in 2013.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay.
Our mixed use would allow the same density, R36, or 36 dwelling units per acre. Mixed use would additionally require retail, commercial type uses on the same site.
Right. And by having Wishbone's portion of the lot changed from mixed use to retail, it would prevent in the future, if there was redevelopment, to have that same R36 and the residential component. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So in essence, that portion, I apologize.
It's okay. The Wishbone property would be retail commercial, which is perfect for a restaurant or a similar type of use. The mixed use would be a much more intensive designation. So by going to retail commercial, we're ensuring the, if you will, the lower future redevelopment if that should ever happen.
Correct. So it is a down zoning.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Haney?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had a question in terms of 216 units. So will this be multiple stories or single story, or how would that be proposed to be built?
Yes, ma'am. 216 units is the maximum density that can be achieved under this designation. The current plan is to spread those dwelling units over 7 buildings, one of which is well, actually, there's 7 residential buildings and a community clubhouse. The 7 buildings are 3 stories tall.
3 stories.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've taken a look at the effect on traffic and access and how that fits in with the neighborhood at this point in time in terms of the residential, because most of the houses around there are single family and townhomes.
Yes, ma'am. That actually is an ongoing thing for us. At this current time, what we're doing is we're just talking about redoing the comprehensive plan designation, but we will be back before City Council to discuss what we call the ODP and the PDP, which are the governing documents for the site, and which get into all the details that you're speaking about: landscaping, parking, compatibility with adjacent site, density, massing, setbacks, etc.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To follow up on the question about the zoning for the Wishbone, so is there anything specific that they're wanting it changed for, or is it more of a future-proofing thing for them?
We asked them and they agreed. It's really just they're helping us out a little bit. Basically what we're trying to do is achieve the idea that that site will be, if, like you said, future-proofed from something too intensive appearing on that, if you will, that hard corner years from now. Wishbone has made it very clear that they're not going anywhere. They're not closing up their doors. It's nothing. There's nothing hidden in the weeds here. We're happy to have them. They're a great partner. They've been here forever, and we love them, and yummy food. But basically, what you're seeing in terms of the change in their designation is simply to prepare us for, the future development scenario.
Okay. And then my other question, my more main concern looking at this, when we do any of these kind of changes, is what the impact is going to be on both water supply as well as sewer infrastructure. So I'm curious about that and how you think that fits in with the proposal or proposed plan that they're looking at doing there.
Very good question. We, of course, reached out immediately to our Public Works and Utilities, as well as all kinds of other external and internal reviewers. We look at this, and they look at this as a windfall, if you will, because under the current designation of mixed use, you would have the same worst-case scenario building to maximum build-out under each scenario. You would have the same density of residential, plus you would have retail and commercial type applications, which could include restaurants and other uses like that, which are much harder on water and sewer capacity. So in effect, when you compare apples to apples, you've removed potentially some of the more hostile negative impacts that could hurt our water and sewer utilities by taking out the retail and commercial impacts, because they are a higher level of impact.
And kind of on that same path, as far as like calls of service for like, say, EMS, fire, and police, is that all kind of calculated into with those additional residents, what you guys look at when you look at these?
Fire and police did respond as well. They, what they look at is time for reaction time, if you will. So a call is placed, hey, we're in trouble, we have a medical emergency, we have a fire, something like this. So their first thing that they always look at is response time. Putting bodies in place to handle whatever the crisis is. Both agencies have expressed that they're 100% ready to go. They both recognize that, again, if this were to develop as a mixed-use scenario, you'd have much more intensive scenario that they would potentially have to respond to. This is, if you will, an easier response scenario for them.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vold.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to revisit a little bit. I had questions about the parking or the traffic and the traffic flow in that area. I live in that area.
Yes, sir.
And as you're heading north on Federal, it's very specific, but turning left or towards the Wishbone, people can't do that now as it is without 260 units there. So what they do now is they go up to North Park, turn into that neighborhood, go around the island, come back, and then head south again. How are you going to accommodate 200 more units and that much more traffic in that area when there's no light there and they use the light at North Park currently?
There's a couple of different scenarios on the table, one of which is there's a stretch of road that runs through just immediately south of the Holly Park subdivision that's going to be, if you will, prepared to be an active road for everyday use, which will help draw some of the traffic. But I do have, if you will, an expert witness with us this evening. Mr. Heath Klein is our traffic engineer, and if it's the pleasure of the council, I'd like to ask him to join us and maybe bring a little more information.
Thank you. Klein, you want to take the podium?
Yes. Good evening, council, mayor, and staff. So Heath Klein, city traffic engineer. So this is an issue and it's ongoing. The city does, can you hear me now? Okay. So we do understand the current situation that 98th Avenue is a signalized intersection. The city does not own or operate the access points on Federal. That is a state highway. So we have asked, there are a couple of things. We do know that that is an issue that you cannot turn left onto 97th Avenue. That is due to the proximity of Cascade Drive on the south between 96th and 97th, and it feeds into the Federal Heights subdivisions over there. The city has asked CDOT to look into whether or not we could accommodate like a continuous left turn that would serve both southbound and northbound, or if we could get a left turn pockets for both of those. Right now, CDOT has kind of given us the indication that that would not be able to be accommodated. So as this development continues to move forward, we would look at trying to formalize the right-in, right-out nature of 97th Avenue. And as Mr. Gurman did bring up Green Court, which is in the Holly Park subdivision, will be opened up fairly soon with, I don't have the exact time, but that would allow users of 97th Avenue to drive down to 96th and utilize the intersection and the signalized intersection of 96th Avenue.
So what's the philosophy that, why would we do that first? Like, why wouldn't we get CDOT or have that left turn lane prior to moving forward?
Well, again, we're working with CDOT to try to get them to buy off on that, but currently it has been consistently a left turn pocket for southbound Federal. And there just really isn't a lot of room to get back-to-back left turn pockets there, but it is something that we're trying to see if they can get on board with that. The current situation is more than likely to remain that 97th Avenue does not allow a left in. We may be able to convince them to allow a left out, but right now, just due to that proximity of Cascade Drive, there is an issue through CDOT's eyes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then, so, other question, I guess. I had another question about the designation of our,
thank you, Heath.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your input. Everything in that vicinity is R3.5 or R8.
Yes, sir.
We're going to R36 for this property. What's the philosophy on that? How do we get from R8 to R36?
It's a very good question, and clearly one that we will be looking at in detail as we start looking at the ODP and the PDP. But for right now, what we're looking at is simply where we started, which is when we woke up this morning, it's mixed use. So it's already at that level. What we're trying to do is we're trying to say, listen, given no other changes, how can we improve this our best way? One of the things we do is we can take out that retail commercial component, so it's already reducing potential impacts there. The site was originally designated mixed use because it had federal frontage, federal boulevard presence, if you will. It never had access directly onto Federal and probably never will. CDOT doesn't want additional curb cuts and access points, if you will. But the idea was that the property had never developed. It was sort of a stagnant property, and the idea was that mixed use would bring additional opportunities to that site. So that was back in 2015 when that was done, and then or even earlier, and then nothing's happened. It still hasn't developed. So what's happened for us now, we have an applicant who's come in and say, hey, what if we at least take it down to R36, which supports what they're trying to do, and also removes this additional layer, if you will, of retail and commercial.
And if I can add to that conversation, when this was initially zoned retail commercial, the city did not see development happening at that capacity. In this particular area, as Mr. Gurman has indicated, the thought was to really enhance development potential. Let's mix in some of the uses that were there, the residential and commercial. That hasn't panned out. We're really seeing mixed use zoning go to our focus areas, especially the vertical mixing of uses. That really is a more urban type model, and we do have those urban places in the city. Downtown is one of them, TOD, and that's where you're going to see this type of development happening. So when you take out that, what you have remaining is that higher density residential, but that was anticipated to be there as a transition of uses. Typically, when you have a major street like Federal at an intersection, you throw in 96th, you see places of assembly, the church use here. You'll see commercial uses. And in a philosophical viewpoint, you'll see a transition of commercial uses, higher density residential, then single family residential. And that's what you see happening here.
Just for the record, would you identify yourself?
Yes, Rita McConnell, Planning Manager.
Mr. Bowles, that's your question? Yes. Okay. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you mentioned that this was affordable housing units. Is there an AMI percentage?
Again, I would like to reach out to our expert witness, Ms. Jenny Grafton.
Can you hear me all right? Okay, thank you. Jenny Grafton, Housing Policy and Development Manager for the city. Yes, to answer that particular question, this project has received low-income housing federal tax credits, and part of that project designates then 30 to 60% area median income being served. 2019 figures for the area median income is $92,800. So you'll be working with 30% of that and 60% of that. That is for a household of 4. There's a much larger table that breaks it down by household numbers, but that's the rough range to work with.
Thank you. And I have one more question. So we have designated, I believe, 5 areas in our city that are urban centers, high-density areas. Does this fall into that? This doesn't actually fall into that area, does it?
No, it does not. And to kind of expand on the point I was trying to make before, this is outside those areas that we're really trying to encourage and push the mixed use, vertical mixing of uses. So this is kind of the odd man out for mixed use. So it makes sense to go more towards residential.
And then, so I know it's along Federal, and I know that Federal has some bus routes, but do we know what the transportation looks like? This is affordable housing. We try to place affordable housing in good transportation areas. But bus routes have been canceled throughout the city this year. Do we know if there's what does the transportation look like?
We reached out to RTD, and they did reference that there are 2 lines that serve that immediate area. Heath, is there more that you might be able to add on the RTD side of things?
I do not know. Heath Klein again. I do not know that they are canceling any or modifying the routes on the Federal Boulevard. So I know that that's still a primary corridor for them, and the city will be studying the Federal Boulevard corridor, and currently RTD is getting ready to do their T2 study metro-wide. So they will be evaluating and looking at adding more service or modifying services. Thank you.
Thank you, Heath.
Ms. Menke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I just have another clarification question for you, Mr. Klein, about the traffic. That you just sat down. So I just want to make sure I understand. So heading north on Federal, that the way to get to this site would be taking a left on 96th and then cutting through the Holly Park subdivision. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be one way, or as the current condition, if they wait for the protected left that is currently at 98th Avenue, you can turn left onto 98th Avenue, do a U-turn at Grove, and then come back down and turn right onto,
Ladies and gentlemen, let's don't do that.
Okay, and then you could make the U-turn, but there's definitely no possibility of another cut through the North Park subdivision.
No, they would have to kind of cut all the way back to Lowell, where you could then, if you were doing that, you would have taken 96th to Lowell, and then north on Lowell, take a right onto 97th and come back into the neighborhood that direction as well. So, and at the 98th Avenue, I know it is a protected only right now for turning left if you're northbound. The city has requested of CDOT to change that to a flashing yellow arrow. We have heard that they're looking into that, but I do not have any time frame as to when they're going to change that.
Thank you.
Other questions of council right now? Mr. German is the applicant here.
Yes, sir. I believe yes.
Do they wish to make a presentation or any comments before I open it up to the public?
He did not indicate to me. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, he will. Thank you.
Just for the record, would you identify yourself, please?
Good evening, council, staff, members of City of Westminster. My name is Jordan Zielinski with St. Charles Town Company, one of the developers, one of the 3 partners behind the project. It is, as staff has presented, a 216-unit affordable housing apartment community. At the end of the day, I'd just like to say that they're neighbors. They're just people who are starting out at a different point in life. That's who would live here if the project does get built. There are all kinds of concerns: traffic, crime, parking, noise. And there are many concerns that concerned neighbors have and that we can adequately address. We do have a parking study. I know there's been a lot of talk, especially about traffic and parking. I know the city and Heath, maybe you can shed some more light on a proposed improvement to the road through Holly Park Townhomes. I don't know if the timing is relatively consistent with the development timing for the St. Mark Village project, so it's probably worth noting that. It's a short-term solution, obviously, that has a long-term, it's a short-term project that has long-term solutions. Regarding the left-in problem along Federal, we've developed along Federal, or along Sheridan Boulevard before, again, a state highway, very difficult to work with CDOT. I think what we would be willing to do to allay those fears about the left end or the U-turn at 98th, we could install a triangle. I don't know what the term is for it, but a triangle right in, right out only improvement, which would drastically decrease any illegal turns. The U-turn problem still kind of has to be solved elsewhere. It's an existing problem in the community. It's not being created by this project. I do want to correct one thing that I heard. The project, if built, will serve residents between 40 and 80% of area median income. For Adams County, this area, and the project has not yet been presented like that, but we do intend to file a updated tax credit application with CHAFA. It's called income averaging. It allows you to target more people, deeper rent skews for lower income households, and then also some higher income folks who really struggle to make the jump from low income housing into full market rate housing. There's some ways to do that. Condos, namely condominiums, but the lack of condominium construction, that whole kind of segment of the population is sort of stuck in place. So from that standpoint, I did hear that it would serve 30 to 60. It will actually be 40 to 80% of area median income. If there are any other questions, I would just say that we're a local development firm, 25 years old. There are 3 of us who are intimately involved. We're a 6-person company, a small business, and we do our best with every project. We've won numerous awards on other projects. Would invite council, members of the public to come enjoy our projects. Some of our tenants are Tattered Cover Bookstore. We developed Twist and Shout, and a whole bunch of others. There's tons of them. Local businesses. We try to do the right thing because it's just the only way to do things. We wouldn't be here for 25 years if we didn't. So we have been working with the HOA for the North Park East Association for over 8 months. Whether or not their board has communicated that to their constituents, I don't know, but we have been actively in contact with them and discussing matters. So that's, and that is ongoing. That's the project. We'll have a neighborhood meeting in case everybody did not get the invite on July 2nd, next Tuesday night, at St. Mark Catholic Church Annex at 6 p.m. So if you can make it, we'll be there to present the project and get to know you. Any questions?
Council, any questions of the applicant? Mr. Bowles, go ahead.
More of a comment. Thanks for being here, Jordan. I appreciate it.
Sure.
But I don't want it to be construed in any way that I'm against affordable housing. I'm not at all. And not in relation with this project. It's the density and the traffic flow that I'm concerned about. I've seen some problems there already. We don't have 200 units there. So, that's where my concern comes. Not from affordable housing, which I support wholeheartedly. So just want to make that comment. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Other comments or questions for the applicant from council? Mr. DeMont?
Yeah, you, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, but you named some different projects that your company has done, and those mostly sounded more like retail. Have there been housing type projects that you guys have done? You've done a lot of these. Is this, where are you at in that space?
Sure. We've completed everything except for industrial and hotel. So mainly we got our start in lower downtown Denver, back when it was not lower downtown Denver, and a lot of condominium, both office and residential conversions. A lot of ground floor retail. We continue down the path of single user and mixed use retail. Some of the projects, we have completed some housing communities as well, including 4 other affordable housing communities. And then a lot of market, like I said, market rate condominiums, even some some historic single family home conversions. So a pretty broad array of real estate product types, but a geographic focus all in Denver. This will actually be the furthest out we've ever been from our office. So.
Great, thank you.
Other questions of the applicant? I've got one I want you to help me define. We are struggling, every municipality in the metro area. When people hear the word affordable, they think of projects. Is this a project housing project?
So when most people hear the word affordable housing, they do think projects. They think Section 8 projects. The Section 8 program, as most people envision it, was abolished in 1982. The Section 42 program, which is the section that folks develop under now, is completely different methodology. Folks pay their own rent, but there still exists Section 8 vouchers. These are folks who pay 30% of their income, whatever that is. They pay 30% of their income, and then a housing voucher covers the rest of the rent. In our other communities, I would say, we typically have 20 to 30 Section 8 voucher residents. They're just like everybody else. We don't see, any irregularities or abnormalities with them. And it's important to note, if somebody with a voucher comes through your door, they go through the same process as everybody else. So there's no special treatment. We don't pick and choose tenants. We have set standards. We do background checks, criminal and credit, if they pass those, and they can income qualify, it's called, so they're not over income, and verify their households, then they become a resident of our communities.
People who reside in your community, can you give me an idea of where they fit in the workforce?
Sure.
Teachers, cops, firefighters,
Yep.
retail workers, what do you got?
Yep, so the average household size in Westminster is 2.3 people per household. We have a larger skew towards larger bedroom types at St. Mark Village, mostly geared towards families, young families starting out trying to make a jump. The people who live at our properties have varying professions. We have a lot of night workers, so people who work the night shift. They clock in, they clock out. We have lots of restaurant employees. We spend a lot of money on carpet cleaning. You can tell who works at a restaurant when they walk home, their shoes have grease on them, and it takes a lot of effort to maintain that and clean it up. But those are the folks. There's medical professionals, typically hourly wage workers. They're not salaried people. There is a broad spectrum. The average family of 4, Jenny mentioned, makes about $55,000 in Denver. The single earners are about 44, or a 2-person household, which is typically a single earner, about 44,000. So that is the income demographic of the folks who live at our properties, and their rent varies between about $1,000 and $1,400. And that's about a 20 to 30% discount to the market.
Other comments you'd like to answer?
No, like I said, I would invite you guys to tour our properties. They're well maintained. We have pride of ownership. We don't have that many properties, so we take pride in the ones that we do have. At the end of the day, people at St. Mark Village are just your neighbors. I wouldn't view them any other way. And I would ask the question, if not now, when? And if not, where? Where? Or if not here, where? So there are lots of places, but this is a moment in time when this kind of a project is possible, and it will pass. So I would encourage you guys to support it. It's needed. I could show you a map of Westminster, and there's a big zero in terms of affordable housing in the north central Westminster section. There are no communities like this, and there are lots of people who need it. Hundreds, approximately 400 people will live here. And if they were to come here and testify today, I can guarantee you it's life-changing for them.
All right, sir, we ask you please to hang around. We might have other questions for you.
We'll be here. Thank you.
Mr. German? Mr. Connolly, anything else from staff?
No, sir. We're here to answer questions if you need us.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is when we're going to turn to you. Here's the way our process goes. We're going to open up the public comment period. I have approximately 20 people who've been identified that wish to speak. If you have any questions when you come to the microphone, you address all questions to me. I'll make a determination of who's going to try to answer it for you, or if we can answer it for you tonight. Due to the number of people who are here, I'm going to ask you to limit yourselves to 5 minutes. I expect at least 10 of you are going to say the same thing that the first 10 did. But I still will give you your opportunity to talk. I'm going to go down the list I have for those who signed up on the white sheet first, and I'll go to the ones who are on the pink sheets. They were the ones who were originally identified for the public hearing. Are there any questions before we start? Yes, sir. You have a sheet? Bring it over and give it to the city clerk, and we'll get you in. Yes, ma'am. We will come to you at the end, and you'll get a chance to talk anyway. Sure. All right, sir. You can get those. One of the clerks will come over and pick it up from you. All right. Ready to go? All right, Miss Sherry.
City councilors, Mr. German, thank you for answering my questions. My name is Lorraine Sherry. I live at 10180 Unit A Green Court, North Park East in Westminster. I moved out of the concrete jungle 21 years ago to North Park East to enjoy peace and quiet, green space, and security. So I ask, please disaggregate the St. Mark's proposal from the Wishbone and the water tower, which sound perfectly reasonable. I have 3 concerns about the R36 zoning. First concern, population density. R36 zoning is appropriate for urban residential developments near transit hubs. We are suburban with R3.5 to R8 ratings. The proposed St. Mark's apartment complex is incompatible with the surrounding homes. Please consider 3 options to maintain the suburban flavor of our community. Option 1, decrease the proposed population density to R18 or lower, and do not let the developer change the setback from the North Park East south boundary and public service easement from the required 50 feet to anything less. Option 2, choose a different urbanized property that warrants R36 zoning, as has been mentioned, one that is walking distance from existing or proposed transit centers. St. Mark's is not. Number 3, possibility. Set an age limit, 50, 55 or over, for St. Mark's Village as affordable senior living, which we desperately need. Many North Park East seniors, like myself, live alone, have downsized, and have 1 car. Most seniors don't need 3 bedrooms or 2 cars and can use Senior Hub for services. Second concern, lack of transit. Excuse me. There are no hospitals, no family clinics, no high schools, no movie theaters, no soccer fields, and no recreation centers within walking distance of the St. Mark Village. Markets are more than half a mile away with groceries. Only Squires Park is nearby, and it is mostly open space. For residents to use any of these amenities, they will need cars. The only public transportation is the RTD Route 31 bus, which does not go to Union Station, or the 31L bus, which only runs on weekdays, and there's 3 stops in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. Residents of this development will have to rely mostly on private automobiles, and more cars have more negative impacts. It is my understanding that the developer has proposed parking for only 1 car per family unit. Some families will need 2 or more cars if both parents work or have a teenager with a driver's license. I believe space should be planned for at least 324 automobiles. That number is based on a low estimate of 1.5 cars per unit. Whether 216 or 324 cars, these additional automobiles will be noisy, clog up the roads, and cause major traffic disruption around rush hours, besides putting pedestrians at risk. CDOT should be made aware of this potential traffic nightmare. Finally, my third concern is the south fence paved footpath, which hasn't been mentioned in this whole discussion. The footpath is located on the North Park East easement. It is primarily used by North Park East residents, generally seniors like myself. By the way, I will turn 80 in the fall. For daily walks, dog walks, or grandparents pushing strollers. No other wheeled vehicles such as bikes, skateboards, rollerblades, and scooters should be allowed on that footpath. Seniors have slow reflexes compared with kids. Accidents can happen. Is the city willing to accept a liability if a non-North Park East resident causes an accident with a North Park East resident on North Park East property? Also, teenagers with time on their hands and nowhere to go always find ways to get in trouble. We have had ongoing problems with graffiti on the south fence, strewn trash thrown over the south fence, and kids breaking into our pool after hours. Erasing graffiti is expensive and can wear out our fence. Broken glass in our pool is dangerous. It has to be closed when it gets cleaned up. By the time anyone dials 911, those trespassers are long gone, and the effective police protection would be almost non-existent. So in summary, please consider either lowering the R36 zoning or using the same proposed St. Mark's Village for affordable senior living. And please, no access for wheeled vehicles on the south fence footpath. Thank you, sir. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Mr. Gurman.
All right, Mr. Hensinger.
That was easy. Ms. Sherry basically said many of the things I wanted to say, and I won't bore you with repeating them. I'm surprised this property ever had the R36 designation or the multi-use with R36 applied. It's just not appropriate. We're not in an urban area, we're in a suburban area, and everything that surrounds it is 3.5 up to 8. I think it should be down zoned from R36 to something more appropriate, like R8. I don't understand how it ever got to this level. It's an extremely small parcel, hard to get to with public transportation, hard to get to from Federal, which is a primary traffic corridor, and it's almost landlocked. So that's what I wanted to say, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Yoder? Or Mr. Yoder?
That'd be all right. I've been called worse things.
Well, I'm never sure when it says Lynn. I'm not sure if it's male or female, so I'll just make the mistake and say Miss.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Council, thank you. Appreciate your time. Mr. Gurman, thank you for your follow-up and your feedback. My goodness, you're busy. I'm Lynn Yoder. I live at 3260 West 98th Avenue, right across the fence. And I have written a lot of things in here, and I'm not going to bore you with them. I want you to read them. Promise me you'll read it. That's my thoughts. That's my feeling. I'm against this program because of just what was said. It's too busy. Too many things are going to happen. If you think we've got problems with traffic accidents where it is, build this and watch the accidents come. And the gentleman's going to cover that turnaround point, and you'll be amazed what happens at that particular corner. It is incredible how many people make a U-turn there. What about the people that go north? The other thing I want to comment on, the gentleman that brought up the question, and he's working with our commission and talking to him. I go to every commission meeting. That has never been brought up. You might have to clarify that with me, okay? It's never been brought up that you've talked to them about this position. So that says a little bit about you. So please read what I have. But one thing I want to cover, I'll sit down and let you guys decide, is that power line that goes across there. 75 feet variance. I live about 74 feet from it. I'm in a single level unit, so it applies. It doesn't come to 75 feet. But what happens is that power line, if you look straight up, comes straight down. It's 10 feet on the North Park property, into our property. Take the 10 feet away, 65 feet you got to go, right? Before the variance. You build a 3-story building, you got to be off of that park line 65 feet. Now think about that for a minute. That's a lot of ground. We got 1,000 feet, 993 feet from the point of where the starts to Federal Boulevard. Just say 10,000 feet. You got 65 feet. That's 65,000 square feet. An acre of land is 4,351 feet. You lose 1.5 acre of land. Now you squeeze these 216 people into not 6 acres, 4.5 acres. Think about that. Let me ask you one question. And you promised that the variance would never, ever be less than that. Mr. Gurman, and I hope that's true. You said that won't be. They'll say, well, we'll grow trees there. You grow trees, they'll cut them off. So you need to be aware of that. They won't grow there. They won't let them. They'll cut them down, but rightly so. The other thing that I want you to think about is you lose that acreage, and how are you going to squeeze these people into that? I have other questions about number of property and people driving out of there. It is going to be enormous. I'm not against progress. I'm against progress in the wrong place. And I want you to think about that. As I look at each one of you, I want to ask you a question. If you lived where I live, 75 feet where this is going to be built, would you vote for it? Think about that. Would you want to live there? I don't think so. But thank you for your time. God bless you all.
Mr. Yoder? Let me make sure I understood one of your comments, because most of what I'm hearing from y'all so far is comments, which is fine. You're asking about the commission. I'm presuming you were referring to the CDOT commission regarding that turn lane?
Yes.
Okay. Let me clarify from Shaylin Batt, to Mike Lewis, to Shoshana Liu, and Shaylin's predecessor. I have personally met with each of the CDOT directors, myself, asking for that turn lane. And in every one of them, it has been referred to staff, and staff has gone back to them and said they would not recommend it because of the turns that were described earlier. So you may not hear it at a commission meeting, but I'm telling you personally, that has come up at least a half a dozen times over the last 2 to 3 years.
I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Mr. Meredith.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. I want to bring up just a couple of things. They may sound disjointed, but they're just my thoughts based on what I've been hearing and what Mr. German has been quite responsive to with Mr. Hensiger and Ms. Sherry. My first thought when I heard about what was going to happen was I knew immediately that when these units were built, they were going to take Hooker Court or Irving Court and put a street through there. Now, Mr. German has said there is no construction planned, but to me, construction doesn't mean a public street. It means like a building, something that can't be torn up and replaced like a sidewalk quickly. Anyway, the reason I think that, and it most likely is going to happen, is because of the configuration on 97th, the light on 98th, and the light on 96th. These people are not going to be satisfied when they want to go north to go down Green Court, which has to be fixed. You can't get through there now. To go up there and then go through 2 lights just to go northbound. So they're going to want to go, and a lot of people used to take that U-turn right there at 98th till they put in the sidewalk. Anyway, that's my thinking, and that was my first thought, which will, I think, eventually have to happen just because of pressure to go through the North Park subdivision to get to that intersection. The other thing that I had was I still am not sure about the comment that this would have a negative impact on the finances or the city's money. And the reason I say that is because this limited liability, limited partnership, I cannot find out who the limited partners are. And I only have a suspicion, and it's basically because I'm not very trusting, as I believe that the property is owned by the Archdiocese of Denver, and there will be no property taxes on that. That's what I think. So I think that fits well into all this stuff about, oh, we're going to really be good about providing affordable housing and everything and be a leader and all of that, it really doesn't make any difference. So I think that's kind of a bother for me. And it also takes away the R8 of that vacant land that started, if you guys remember, and the builder went belly up, I think. And that's going to be a wasteland. You'll probably never be able to develop that again unless you want to put more affordable housing there. One thing that I think, and it may be the most subtle that's going to happen, is when you put affordable housing with that density in that small location with their limited access, and there's no place for them to go, as Ms. Sherry pointed out, there's no way to get there, even if there was a place to go. You really are going to not have a vibrant, inclusive community. You will find that there will be people, if they're just renters, they will be basically resentful because they won't like that they're there and the people just within 50, 75 feet of them have what they have. And I think that's one thing you should give a thought to before you put that kind of property with that much density that close to smaller units and people who just own. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, let me try to see if I can fix a couple of your questions. Mr. German, the street cuts that he was referring to, can you address those?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So North Park East is comprised of 3 different filings. Going by memory here, I think it's 10, 11, and 14. They are bounded on their southern side by a 75-foot easement, which is owned by Public Service Company of Colorado, which we now know as Xcel Energy. That is where the high tension lines are. That is where the multi-use path is. That is not developable. Streets cannot go through there. Homes cannot be built there. Buildings cannot be built there. That easement is in perpetuity, and obviously it's well used. It's got a very significant role to play. If you just look up, it's carrying very high energy lines. So basically what you have is you have North Park on the north side of that easement, and the property we were talking about, the, if you will, St. Mark Village property on the south side of that easement. There will be no roads developed through there. There are no proposals to develop roads through there. There are no proposals for connections between North Park directly to the St. Mark Village property.
Okay. Mr. Hall, no, you weren't scheduled to be up here tonight, but you are now. In regards to the comment in regards to the property ownership, that is being purchased by a private company. It is not, will not be on the market for anything other than a private company for them leasing. There is no indication that I am aware of that property taxes would not be paid as a normal process of business.
Mr. Mayor, John Hall, Economic Development Director, that's my understanding as well, that once it transitions into the hands of private ownership, it would be taxable property. Although I would also ask the applicant, perhaps.
You'd like to answer it also, sir? I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I have an indication I might know where it's at.
Jordan Zielinski with St. Charles Town Company. The property has been purchased by an entity named 3100 West 97th Avenue LLLP. It is already a part of the public record. A simple assessor search will reveal that. Another simple Secretary of State business search will show that an affiliated entity, 3100 West 97th Avenue Development LLC, is the general partner of that entity. Regardless of what those names are, St. Charles Town Company is the developer, is the owner. There are 3 individuals who will own the property. 2 of them are in this room. The other is not currently.
So, Mr. Lindy, before you sit back down, just want to clarify, there is nothing that in the sales agreement between you and the Archdiocese that makes this property tax exempt?
Jordan, with St. Charles, just to reiterate, the property has already traded. So St. Charles, affiliates of St. Charles Town Company currently own the land.
Okay.
The vertical development will be taxed at normal property tax rates. There will be no special exemptions, and it is currently being taxed this year as of the end of January when we purchased the property.
Okay. All right, that's the only ones I think from Mr. Merritt, I think I can clarify. Dan? I'm not going to butcher the name again.
Dan Friedrich. I live at 10065 Hooker Place in Westminster in North Park. So background, I am a financial analyst. I also served 9 years in special operations in the military. Have been all over the world, seen multiple things, and I've decided to raise my family here in North Park. I have a 4.5-month-old son right now. And I will tell you, we moved into North Park in October, and the cut through that I have seen just on the main easement that goes from 104th through North Park to hit the Federal, people speed through there all the time. Now you want to put an easement of, we'll say 400 people, as the developer said, just 400 people would be there, which doesn't make any sense actually if you look at low-income housing and the amount of people in the proximity, and I don't know how many people are supposed to be in the dwellings. What's the max occupancy of the dwelling? 4?
You asked me the question. I'll try to get you an answer.
I would like to know how many people would be in the max occupancy of the dwelling. So if it's 4, hypothetically, it's going to be well above 400, just in that small area, pushed up against this community that's growing and budding, and there are multiple families that are of my age with young children that are growing up in this community also. So now we are maxing the capacity there of what would happen. On top of that, so we're saying 30 to 60% of the median income is the range. 92,000 is the amount that North Park hypothetically makes. So you're looking at $27,000 is the lower end. The National Bureau of Economic Research has created a paper on the analysis of income property developments, low income property developments, and they talk in that paper about an income disparity of $54,000 between the median average incomes. And when that disparity occurs, then there is multiple problems that do exist during that time frame. Along with that, within 0.1 miles of that area of development, property values do decline by 2.5% in 10 years. If you want to see more about the paper, it's from Timothy McQuaid, National Bureau of Economic Research, published in 2016. Finally, if we go through, let's say, low-income housing and the amount of children that will influx into the area, let's just say it's 1/3 of the population. So let's just say 72 kids will be going to elementary school. Do we really think that Rocky Mountain Elementary is ready for the influx of 72 more children at that time frame? They said that they were, apparently, is what Mr. Gurman has posted. However, I highly doubt 72 children in the influx to elementary would be a feasible thing for Rocky Mountain Elementary. Thank you.
Okay, sir. All right, so let me try to find out one. All right, so Mr. Frederick, I'm going to try to find out about the occupancy question in the schools. Okay. Mr. Applicant, come on back up. Mr. German, I'm going to ask you to cover the issue of the school's response.
Yes, sir.
So the question is approximately what is the occupancy of each of the units up there?
Like I said, the average occupancy is 2.3 per household. That's spread across unit types, family types, bedroom types. That's a general average. I would anticipate we would be well within that average. I don't think we'll be higher. I don't think we'll be lower. The majority of our applicant, and this is an important thing to note. I heard several things tonight about essentially crowding. It is not possible within low-income housing tax credit development to have a unit that is crowded. Every single year, we income certify every single member, adult member of a household. So anybody over the age of 18 submits pay stubs. Those pay stubs are independently verified and then complied with federal tax law. If you do not comply with those tax laws, your tax credits are recaptured. That simply does not happen. So overcrowding doesn't exist. We don't have a situation where we have multiple tenants renting in one household. So a lot of market rate units will have 2 roommates or 3 roommates sometimes. That does not happen in affordable housing communities. It's an important distinction. That affects parking, that affects per unit occupancies. It's a good thing. So I just want to clarify that. Overcrowding of units is quite literally not possible.
Okay. Mr. German, you want to address the school piece?
Yes, sir. We reached out to Adams 12, which is the school district. They look at it, they run the population numbers, 216 units with the breakdown that Mr. Zielinski provided, 3-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, et cetera. They develop through their own matrices how many children that would typically generate at the 3 school levels, elementary, middle school, and high school. They actually report that all 3 schools in those 3 categories that would serve this development, should it be built, are currently underpopulated in terms of students. And they said they are perfectly accepting of new students and that they do not anticipate any problems.
All right. You might want to sit closer. I think you're going to be back. All right, Reverend Chisholm.
Your Honor, member of the council, is Mr. Gurman? Yes. Thank you for your time. Reverend Sam Chismar, 10191 Green Court, Unit A in Westminster. That's the Green Court that is up behind the subway and the King Super. I had several questions and comments. My first was, what would be the rental cost of a unit in the development?
Reverend?
I'm sorry.
Bring the questions to me
Okay,
and I'll
sorry.
catch up with you.
Yes, sir. What would be the rental cost per unit? Comment also, the concrete triangle the developer suggested. I sit up at Starbucks. There is such a triangle there. We watch illegal left turns into there every day, including a King Super food truck semi. The police enjoy that intersection. They pull them over left and right, but mostly turning left. They do the same thing coming out across from the Safeway area. They try to make a right or a left turn, or a right turn, onto Federal going south, illegal. But they're doing it every day. We see it happen. The starting teacher's salary in Westminster is going to be one of the highest in the metro area at $50,000 a year. Now, at the current average recommended 30% of your income, that teacher will be having to spend probably $1,250. Will teachers be needing this affordable housing? I also resent the notion of low-income housing. My niece is a licensed respiratory therapist, works for the Kindred Health System. She cannot afford to live alone. She was living with her sister, was a kidney dialysis technician for DaVita. They were subsidized by mom and dad back in Michigan. Colorado, how does it feel to be subsidized by Michigan? But those are basically my comments, but one compliment to the developer that may you pass on. David Bowie called the Tattered Cover Bookstore the best bookstore in the Western Hemisphere, so thank you for your work with the Tattered Cover. But those are my comments. Basically, the traffic And then what do we mean by affordable housing when a teacher might have to be using, quote, affordable housing? Thank you.
All right, sir, let me see if I can go. Mr. Applicant, I told you you're going to need to sit closer. Can you give me an idea of the projected rental cost? And I know this could change with the cost of the development.
Is the question about the monthly rental cost?
so.
Okay. So the average, the 60%, which is what the project will balance out to, ranges between $1,046 and $1,448 per month for a 1 to a 3 bedroom. Like I said, the average income of a household, a 4-person household, which is about the average, the average family in Denver is, just give me a moment, and I will tell you exactly. A 1-person 60% household average is $39,000. A 2-person household is $44,580. A 3-person household is $50,160. And a 4-person household is $55,680. As I mentioned before, most of our tenants are folks starting life out, trying to find their way.
All right, sir, thank you. All right, I'm going to take about 2 more people, and then I'm going to ask you to abide with us while we go take a short bio break. We've been here since 5:30 in our earlier meetings, so then we're going to take a short pause, then we'll come back and we will continue. We will continue the public comment till everyone who signed up has a chance to speak. Mr. Whitney.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council people. I'm here to talk about, my concern is traffic flow. I would thank Mr. Gurman and Mr. Klein. They've been in a lot of communication with me back and forth, and they've been very impressed. I'm impressed with their service to the citizens. They've done an excellent job. Back in 2011, I dug up some emails when I contacted, at that time it was Greg Olson. I don't know if he's still with the city or not. At that time, he was Transportation Systems Coordinator about this concern before all this took place back in 2011. And I talked with Nancy, the mayor, at that time also. I also went and talked to Federal Heights, because that's that other side of the street. They both directed me to the county. The county directed me to the state. The state, I dealt with them and never got an answer about all my concerns about coming north on Federal, can't turn left, 97th, you've heard all that. It's still my concern. My understanding is the property just south of the Wishbone might be built up into more townhomes and homes, so there's more traffic there besides these things there. I'm looking for some kind of relief of the left turn lane coming north on Federal. I live on the house on the corner of 98th and Grove, so when they dip into North Park, they go right by me, and it's a parade. Back in 2011, when I first brought this up, I sat out there on a Saturday on the corner from 11 to 12:30 and 5 to 6:30, and 143 cars dipped in there, and 106 of them went down and turned into 97th Avenue. That was back in 11. Think of the population growth that's taken place now. It's like a parade out there. I'm real popular anytime with politicians because they want a sign on my yard because there's so many people that see that. I always thought maybe I probably shouldn't have brought this up. If you let me set up a toll booth there, anybody goes around, I'd be a billionaire now and I'd donate it right back to the city so you could have that. But my concern is trying to get a left-hand turn lane in there or somehow direct the traffic so it's not coming up the 98th and going in there and making a U-turn and going back. And again, I thank you for your time and your commitment you made to me, and I guess it's still in the state's hands that we can get this solved. Thank you.
Mr. Truitt.
Mayor and council. 99% of my thoughts have already been spoken. I would simply want to reiterate, especially the one that was just mentioned about the turnaround. It happens all the time. And that has to get worse if you put 400 people or 300 cars or whatever number you want to pick out just on the other side of the fence, because they can't get there hardly any other way if you're going north. So I would urge you to reconsider this, or at least consider it again, because I think that it's going to be a big problem for those of us that are already living there. I don't care how much money anybody makes and where they make it, but it's just unreasonable to put that many more people in that little a space, because it's going to change the neighborhood. There is no way to avoid that. That's my only comment. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes to let everybody have a chance to get up and stretch some, get a break, get something to drink. The restrooms, if you've not been here before, are just straight out here, so please make yourself. Council, I'll ask you to go upstairs.
You did the immigration presentation.
Might not knowing what I wanted to do, so a lot of Afghanistan and Iraq, Somalia. Yeah. That's say my years of training
You'll probably see me out walking. It is, you know, great place
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we could everybody to retake their seats. We'll try to continue on. All right, Mr. Burnick. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we need you to sit down and please discontinue your conversation so that the microphone will only pick up the testimony.
Thank you, Mayor.
Burnick,
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Matthew Burnick. I live at 9849 Julian Way, Unit A in North Park East. I'm also a board member of the HOA. I think I'm the only one who's made it here from the board tonight. But I want to address the council on a few issues that haven't already been raised. I agree with most of the issues that people have brought up about traffic and the inappropriateness of this type of dense, low-income housing development at this site. It is the wrong place. I am a huge supporter of affordable housing. However, I also live in North Park East. North Park East is directly across the street from Federal Heights. Okay? You want to talk about affordable housing, Federal Heights is full of affordable housing. The median home price in Federal Heights is 62% below the national average. So there is no shortage of affordable housing in my immediate neighborhood. Okay? There is a lot of affordable housing. And I appreciate the council's time in considering this proposal. I strongly urge you to vote against it. I can tell you that not only are these people here, but there's 1,000+ residents who live in North Park East, and I can tell you that overwhelmingly they are strongly against this development. This is an inappropriate place to put affordable housing. If we want to build affordable housing, build it in the new Westminster mall development that's going in right now, which by the way looks amazing. But there's public transportation, there's going to be shopping, there's going to be all kinds of services in that area, none of which is servicing this particular area. And I will tell you right now, this will definitely drive down the housing values for the members of my community. I'm here to speak for them. Thank you very much.
Mr. Burnick, thank you for your comments. And by the way, the very first housing project to open at downtown is affordable housing. All 120 units. Thank you. All right, I've come back to Robert Tobin. Did that individual ever show up? Since they signed up, I assume they were here at some point. Okay. Mr. Dick Johnston.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for this opportunity for having a public hearing. I'm Dick Johnston. I've lived in North Park East Homeowner Association since 1993. I served 12 years as director and officer during the development phase and thereafter. First of all, I want to very much compliment and endorse the written comments by our Lorraine Sherry. who expressed the views of many of the residents of North Park East and all the other comments that are in this particular document. I strongly endorse those. But first of all, I would like to re-emphasize the traffic problem, and as far as I can see, there is no answer to the problem it would create. We're talking about dumping 400 cars, maybe every day, onto one street with a limited 1 or 2 points of access into this development, and impossible traffic jams at both ends of 17th and 97th Avenue at Lowell and Federal. I would submit that perhaps if the city feels it must have low to moderate income housing, I would suggest that they take a look, however possible, at some large tract of land directly south of here, fronting on Federal, that has been mysteriously vacant for 10 years. It has good access to Federal, and I think would make a much more desirable development for low to moderate income housing than this jammed in proposal. Secondly, I would suggest that if this property needs to be developed, the pattern established and very successful in North Park East of townhomes arranged in that configuration with a lower density than this would be a very appropriate development on this piece of land. The proposal as it stands now would create, along with North Park East, two highly antagonistic communities, which would be totally against the city's so-called comprehensive plan and social values. We would have two communities totally antagonistic, separated by a fortress-like wall. I beg of you, please don't let it happen. Thank you.
Ms. Mascarenas?
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for giving us this opportunity to come by and voice our concerns about this development project. First of all, I want to let you know, my name is Gloria Mascarenas. I live at 9869 Julian Way, Unit D. I have lived there for 26 years and have enjoyed every moment that I have lived there. It's a beautiful community. Our association has kept it up beautifully. Our neighbors are wonderful. You know, very little traffic. You know, something that, you know, this project will surely give us a lot more traffic, that's for sure. And with low income, God only knows what else it's going to bring. But everybody else has pretty much, you know, addressed all the concerns that I had, and they did a beautiful job of researching so many different things that I would not have done. I think my final thing that I want to say is that I belong to St. Mark's Church, and I think I will go talk to Father Ken and see if he'll leave the church doors unlocked for every day for as long as he can so that we can go pray that this development will not go through. Thank you.
Okay, so I have two sets of sheets. Some of you, I think, signed up twice. So I'm going to run through this group I have, and I think you've all testified. Daniel Freedom, Daniel, you've already testified, correct? I think he left. Lorraine Sherry, I got you. All right. James Hensinger, got you. Mark Whitney, taken care of. Lynn Yoder, yes, sir. Got yours. Matthew Bernick, yours is taken care of, okay. How about Marvin Storm?
Mr. Mayor?
Good evening, sir.
Marvin Storm. I live at 1025 North Park Drive. I'm not butted up against the area involved, but my mother-in-law, I moved her into that area 15 years ago because of high crime in Thornton, and I'm not particularly excited to have to move her again. And I know that many people moving in, I believe that the pool was closed for a couple of years because of damage already. in that area. And if you put a bunch of kids and teenagers, that pool probably will never be open again. But everyone has summed it up. I mean, it's very logical what they're saying. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Amy Lotus.
I'm Amy Lotus. I live at 10123 Grove Loop, Unit B. I actually have questions for you.
Sure.
I will go on record. I am opposed to this as well. It is interesting to me, and I would ask all of you, would you actually buy a home that you can't get to? Right? You buy a house, you go shopping in a place that you can turn in and pull in your driveway. This is an absolute nightmare. I feel so sorry for the man that lives on the corner. I just do. I struggle to understand how anybody who agrees with this project believes that not having egress or access in and out is a logical solution to put this development up. Couple questions. The gentleman over here, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, made mention that in a water and sewer study, the usage of 216 apartment buildings actually has lower usage than, for example, the Wishbone, right? He made mention that it would actually have better usage with water and sewer with apartments. So I'd like to have clarification on that comment. I don't understand that, how 400 people showering and using the toilet and whatnot is less. The lady over here, she made an interesting comment, and she said that this development is the odd man out. I can't think of an actual better phrase for what this project is. We all live in townhomes. Some are single story, some are 2-story, and now we're going to drop in this 3-story high density building. It's going to be brand new. I'm sure the developer wants it to be beautiful, but it is not the kind of property that should be in the rest of the townhomes. It is the odd man out. It is the eyesore. Why on earth are you putting this huge building where these poor people have to look at it every day, or it blocks the sun? Also, as it relates to parking and traffic, everybody turns left off of Federal, takes North Park Avenue either to Hooker or to Lowell, and they speed like bats out of hell. I mean, I don't know how this traffic is going to do that either. We have no police presence. We have no speed thing. I mean, I feel bad for the people with children and dogs because I have yelled at people speeding through there. So I just want to comment about the whole North Park to Hooker to Lowell. This isn't going to get any better there. For the developer, I want to know, okay, we've got an average of 2.3 people per household. There's no 0.3 in existence. So how, in a 1 to 3 bedroom apartment, you could literally have 6 people in that apartment. You could have 2 people in each bedroom. You could have 3. So I want to know, how do they control the maximum number of people that can live in an apartment? I get that they ask for pay stubs. I get that they income qualify. But how do you know how many people are truly living there and then managing to that? I want to know who manages on site, right? Okay, so we've got 2.3 people. What are you going to do about the unit with 8? What are you going to do when people are hopping fences or making illegal left turns? I want to know what the management intends on doing about that. Is it 24/7? I also don't agree that they've been working with our HOA for 8 months. I read every single newsletter. I haven't seen this until very recently. And lastly, the developer made a comment that these kind of low or affordable housing units are life-changing for the residents, I want to talk about what's life-changing for all of us that own properties, right? Life-changing, at a minimum, our home values will decline 2.5%. I moved in 5.5 years ago, and I have had 65% appreciation on my townhome. I'm gonna get to retire to Florida someday because of it, right? But you know what's life-changing for me? If this project goes through and my home value drops, you've just dropped the home value of almost 500 homeowners, and these renters don't give a care about that. They'll be in and out of that property before any of us can sell and move. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gurman, I think you have the answer on the water usage that was brought up. Can you address that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So to re-explain the water situation, if you imagine both property, or if you imagine the property that we're talking about developing worst case scenario or to its maximum under the mixed use scenario versus to its maximum under the R36 scenario. Both scenarios would allow the same amount of families. In this case, 6 units, or 36 dwelling units times 6 acres is 216 dwelling units. That's where that number comes from. That would be the same under either scenario, current, what it is now, versus R36. If you keep it the way it is now, you also must then add retail and or commercial components in addition to the residential. Now, we recognize that any development that would come in the door would not necessarily seek to maximize either the residential component or the commercial component or any mixture of said components. But if you're looking at them apples to apples, you have to assume worst case scenario or maximum case development scenario. And when you compare them that way, the water and sewer usage is less when you, if you hold the residential constant and remove the retail and commercial usage. That is the explanation that was provided by our Public Works and Utilities.
All right, so let me make sure I'm clarifying so that we all try to get on the same page. The way the zoning sits today, stop this here and go away, then the developer comes in with an application that meets the guidelines of the property designation of today. That has still got an R36 rating for residential.
Yes, sir. If it was done to the maximum, it could have the same proposed density.
So the only thing that would be added is the commercial.
That is correct.
That would still be on top of the R36.
That is correct.
What this application does is basically just takes out all the commercial.
Yes, sir.
Still remain with the same identical residential mix.
That is correct.
Okay. As far as the speeding, the developer can't answer that. There's no way to control that. There's people sitting in the adjoining room that are hearing this, that's their job, is to help with that control. And I'm looking at the chief, and I expect them to try to figure out a way to address this. As far as the comment about the odd man out, I think I can try to explain that, but if I don't get it right, you correct me. The focus groups that she was referring to is we have certain areas that we're trying to focus to get commercial development into. And that is where it has the best possible use for commercial property and most likelihood of development. This particular property that we're discussing tonight is not a focus site that we're trying to push commercial into. But we are trying to allow people who want to bring forward quality development to do that. So whether or not it stays the way it is, or we downsize by taking the commercial out, that's still to be decided tonight. But I think the issue was to try to point out is that is not really a viable area for new commercial development. And I don't know that the community wants it because unfortunately, we have some pockets in the city today that has developed with commercial strips that have sat for 3 and 4 years with empty shells. We can't fill them because they're in an area where there's not commercial product marketing. So I think that is the reference you were referring to. But if you would like to expand on it or to correct me, please go right ahead.
No, that is a good reference, and also just the mixing of uses when you have commercial and residential mixed together.
As far as site management, our developer, you want to come back up? I know some of the comments I don't think you can answer. But if you can respond to any of the past comments from Ms. Lotus, that would be fine.
Jordan Zielinski again. As far as management, Echelon Property Group, again, another local company will be managing the project. We have on-site property managers. They are there 24/7. The Echelon Property Group manages about 10,000 units, primarily in the metro area and along the Front Range. I have some other notes on Ms. Lotus. I'd be happy to share. You referenced a couple of studies. There's a plethora of research, both formal and informal, on home values in the immediate areas of low-income housing tax credit properties. That is to the contrary of Ms. Lotus's comments. I would be happy to share the information and let her review them and make her own determinations after the fact. And I think Dave answered all of her other questions.
All right, Dolores Ramirez.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I want to comment, I'm really glad to see how much civic engagement there is that so many residents have the time, the bandwidth, and the resources and the know-how to have their voice heard, and I appreciate that. So my name is Dolores Ramirez, and I work for Growing Home. I work for a nonprofit organization that works to create more equitable and fair communities, because we believe that all families should have access to the critical resources that they need. That includes homes that people can afford, because really, we are all human beings, and everyone should deserve a chance at success. That's all. Thank you.
Excuse me. All right, so I've tried to check to make sure I haven't missed anybody. If I have, I apologize, but I think I've gone through the entire sign-up list and all the pink sheets. But to ensure that everybody has an opportunity that wants to talk tonight, if I've missed anybody or if you decided at the last minute you want to say something, please come on down. Yes, sir. Either one of you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council. My name is John Atanasio. Used to live in North Park for 25 years. I still live in Westminster. And everyone here, especially I think Lorraine, has given some beautiful facts and reasons why this property should not go into effect. I would like to give the Italian emotional response or question. The city of Westminster, which I've been in for over 30 years, has grown tremendously. You have dumped on us humongous projects next to the ice skating rink, behind the Olive Garden, the new Westminster project. I think there's 10 to 15,000 people on the Sheridan project across from the golf course. I'd just like to know, our property taxes have jumped tremendously, and that has to do mainly paying for school and for the extra children. So I imagine all these additional children will make our taxes go up. You've increased the population of Westminster to the point where we need new water facilities, and you've jacked up our water rates significantly, and I'm sure more to come. Crime rates in Westminster has gone exponential in the last 4 to 5 years, and I'm just asking, when is it going to be enough? How much do we need? When are you going to take a breath? Think about the people that live here and have been here for a long time. Thank you very much.
I got one more coming. That's all right.
I'll get there.
You take your time, sir, not a problem.
Thank you, Councilman, Mayor, for your input and the opportunity to express our opinions. I think they have been very well covered. I'm a property owner at North Park East, and I am solely, strongly against this development because I have experienced in the past my lifetime, and I'm a pretty elderly gentleman. Well, excuse the gentleman, I'm half right. I'm old. And I've experienced that low rental properties have gone, excuse my French, gone to shit after a short period of time. This gentleman said there was going to be a manager on site 24/7. There's been a manager on some properties that I know of that was on that, and it went to crap. The place, they didn't take care of it. The people didn't take care of inside. They tear the buildings outside to paint and the whole thing. And that is not what Westminster needs. Because I am proud of Westminster, the fact that you guys and the previous and whatever have done what you have in Westminster. I was talking with Matthew about this. There is no, that I know of, what I would call slum area in Westminster. And I think you people need to be proud of that. And I can tell you this, my place that I owned there, townhouse, was inspected by you people because there was some potential of some areas that were being run down and bringing down the property value and the whole appearance of Westminster. And I'm proud of Westminster. The new art people down on whatever it is, 73rd or whatever street it is. And my fear is that property may go great for a few years, but after a few years, and as has been expressed earlier, graffiti and the whole works, the property value, and I agree with this lady over here that said the property value will deteriorate. I don't care what this gentleman said. That's not true. I know for a fact on two places specifically that the property value in and around low-income property has deteriorated or maintained a low, whereas this lady said it is appreciated in value. So my suggestion is don't do this to my property at North Park East and the people on Federal Boulevard. Thank you very much.
Sir, before you go away, I need you to turn back around and do one thing for me. I just need you to tell us who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don Ross, 9874 Unit B, Grove Street. I live down the street from this U-turn that this gentleman talked about down there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. If you haven't testified or you haven't had comments, I will still take you. But if you've already had an opportunity, I will not give you a second one. You get one shot. Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for having us here tonight and hearing our voices. I'm a local realtor in town, and I live 2 houses up in a house in North Park East, right from the fence where the development would be. And I could tell everybody in this room that regardless of statistics, that when you're selling a home, there is a perception with an apartment complex next to the home or close to the home, let alone a low-income apartment housing complex. And it negatively impacts the value. People don't even want to look at it. They don't even want to see the house because of an apartment complex being close by to a home or a townhome. So I feel that it would really hurt our values and hurt the homes and the townhomes in the area, regardless of his statistics and what his property values show. I think that the financial person who presented the 2%, I think that's a low percentage because it's just like a house on a busy street. People don't want to look at it. They don't even go there. They're like, oh, it's close to that. And I will also say that I think that low-income housing is good in certain areas in Federal Heights, there's a lot of low-income housing. I think that there's open areas that could be developed. I donate to Growing Home. I'm supportive of helping families have a home, have a place, work with a lot of first-time home buyers, but I just know the negative impact of that on our homes in our area. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me.
All right, one
Miss-
last opportunity for anyone who has not testified that still wants to come forward.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we did not get her name either.
Okay, I'm sorry, ma'am. Come back to the mic so we can record it, please, ma'am.
Donna Demas.
Okay. All right, again, anyone who hasn't had an opportunity to speak, that still wants to do something, regardless of how many times it's been repeated, I want to make sure everyone that's here tonight that wants to talk gets that opportunity. Okay. And again, since I didn't have you sign up, please give us your name and address.
My name is Robbie Deason. I'm retired Air Force. I lived in Colorado since I retired at Buckley for 22 years. I moved away for a year and a half, went to Virginia, came back here, got a job in Boulder, and bought in Westminster. I bought where I am now because of the safe feeling I have as a single woman when I walk my dog in the neighborhood. Some of the others in the group have commented on how fast the cars run down North Park on the way to Lowell to cut through our neighborhood. It's unsafe. It's unsafe for me, and I'm only 62. There are other people in our neighborhood who are much older who try to get out and get their physical activity. But when they come down from 104th on Hooker Street and they get to the intersection of North Park, oftentimes, if you're not right in that intersection, they will speed right through that sign and not even stop. It's a traffic issue now. The increased population will make it worse in the future. And I would like to have it remain a safe place for me to reside until I go into retirement, because it's a nice neighborhood. Thank you very much.
All right, anyone else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'm going to close the public comment period. I'm going to go back to the city council and see if there's any questions or comments that they have based upon the testimony they've heard tonight, so that we can see if we can get any of your questions still answered. Ms. Seitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me just compose myself here. So one of the criteria that we're supposed to make this decision on is number 8, the proposed amendment will not negatively impact the transportation system. We've heard a lot of traffic concerns tonight. My understanding from your earlier testimony is that there is a potential proposed solution south at 96. Am I understanding that you would would CDOT be amenable to putting in a light there, or is there a light right now, and then it would it would perforate through that Holly Park subdivision into 97th? Am I understanding that correctly? And what is the certainty of that?
Going to go ahead and let Heath field that for us.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, Dave Downing. And just as a starting point, also versus mixed use, versus its current designation, we're not, the proposed designation would not represent an increase.
Okay, so because it's a down zoning, it actually will alleviate potential impacts to our transportation system?
Yes, ma'am. So,
okay, so that'll, I have a second question.
Then we'll have Dave.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Downing, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. Dave Downing, I'm the city's Director of Community Development, and perhaps I should also establish my ability to speak about traffic and transportation. Prior to my current position, I was city engineer here for 24 years. I'll try to add some clarity. I may end up saying some things that are totally obvious to council, but I think I've learned over the years that never assume that anything that those of us who deal with these issues think is obvious that everybody understands them. We've heard testimony tonight about, I'm going to try to put this in context. We've heard testimony tonight about perhaps 400 or maybe even 500 people living in the future development of St. Mark's. That doesn't mean 400 or 500 vehicles leaving the site at the same time. Mr. Klein is much more knowledgeable to be able to speak in a technical manner, but I'll try to say it in my own way. Traffic engineers, when you're studying congestion and the impacts of new developments on the overall transportation system, they speak in terms of impacts to the peak hour. That's the best way to measure how a new development might be affecting congestion and the traffic systems. And as is almost always the case, the peak hour is the PM peak hour. So it's the heaviest traffic hour, probably sometimes between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. On a daily basis. Impacts from developments, of course, are a function of the number of people living in the proposed development. Again, it's not 400 or 500 vehicles, but in this case, Mr. Klein has received like a preliminary traffic study, that what we call a trip generation study, to do that very thing that I was talking about. Study the number of trips that will be additional trips on top of existing that are generated by the proposed development. In this case, in the PM peak hour, the proposed development would generate 95 additional trips per hour in that peak hour. So again, I'm not going to say that's totally insignificant, but again, do the math. You divide 95 by 60 minutes, so you're talking about, what, is that 1.5 trips per minute during the peak hour. Again, I'm not saying it's insignificant, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware. This is not a rush of 400 cars leaving the site or arriving at the site all at the same time. So I think anybody could look at the vicinity map that we've been looking at and easily come to the conclusion that the best way to solve the traffic situation from this proposed development is to have a full turn signalized intersection at 97th Avenue and Federal Boulevard. We continue to work with CDOT to see if we can achieve something like that, meaning maybe full turn unsignalized or the ultimate full turn signalized. But I think we got to assume that that's not going to be possible. And if you're interested, I could go into the reasons in more detail why CDOT's opposed to that. But I think we need to assume that 97th and Federal will continue to be a right-in, right-out situation for as long as we know here. So when we look at, okay, so what are the solutions, or at least the mitigation measures? Well, like any kind of transportation problem that we're addressing, is dispersion of traffic, or giving people as many alternatives as we possibly can. You heard some testimony earlier tonight. Want to make sure everybody's clear on what we're talking about. Again, looking at the vicinity map, south of between 96th and 97th Avenue, that first north-south street west of Federal is called Green Court. Green Court. If you drive by there right now, it's not in real good condition. It requires some significant rehabilitation. I can't tell you right at this minute that we have the money earmarked for that purpose, but we have time. We have time to do cost estimates. We have time to approach council in future budget cycles to see if there's interest in doing some kind of significant rehabilitation to Green Court. Again, keep in mind, we're probably, at least 2 years away from anybody actually living in St. Mark's. So we have time. We have time to consider that as one of our alternatives to mitigating the traffic. Again, Councilor Seitz, or Mayor Pro Tem Seitz, I think you were asking about whether the intersection of 96th and Federal is signalized, full turn signalized. Yes, it is. So that's one alternative to disperse the traffic. The other thing you don't see, of course, and again, this is probably obvious to most people, but one thing you don't see when you look at this vicinity map is that 97th Avenue goes farther west also. It connects directly to Lowell Boulevard, which is probably classified as a major collector at this point. It's a street that's made to carry a significant amount of traffic. You know, when we look at this, we automatically think federal. Well, there's another way to go also. So don't forget that there's a good connection over to a major roadway to the west. There was some discussion earlier tonight about the bus system and the bus routes, Route 31 on Federal Boulevard. We have heard no indications from RTD that there's going to be a reduction in service for Route 31. I can tell you for at least the past 40 years, Route 31 in Westminster has been by far the most highly used local bus route in the whole running through the city of Westminster. It would be very difficult to have any kind of reduction in service for such a popular route. And while it's true that it doesn't connect to the south to Union Station, it connects with numerous routes that cross it. Connections can be made throughout virtually the entire northern half of the Denver metro area. So again, I'm not saying I have the magic solution here that we know exactly how to take care of traffic, but I'm telling you about the various alternatives that are available to try to disperse this, and hopefully I've also put into context some numbers to what kind of additional traffic we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple other questions. So one thing that I hope is clear is that the current density is actually higher when you take into account the commercial and retail component of it. When that was done in the comprehensive plan, was that designated in 2013 with that adoption of the comprehensive plan, or did it have that designation prior to that?
You're correct. That's when it changed. Before that, it was retail commercial.
Okay. Was there did we hear from the community at that point in time? Was there concerns from residents when it was changed in the comprehensive plan back in 2013 to mixed use, which is actually a higher density than this proposal?
I know that there were extensive community outreach efforts. I don't know to what extent, for example, North Park was reached out to directly, or specific groups were targeted. Unfortunately, I haven't delved too much into that change, but I was here during that time period, and I know that when they were doing that last change, there was quite a bit of open houses and discussion periods and community outreach type events that were held citywide, because these changes were not just here; they were all over the place. And I think they were well attended, and I think there was a lot of people coming out and with concerns and with support and with, could we try it this way? And there was a lot of public involvement.
And then I want to clarify an earlier comment that I believe Planning Manager McConnell made. Were you saying it is kind of a better practice in planning to have a transition from kind of that R6, R8 to more dense residential before going to commercial? Were you saying that's kind of a wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying, but it sounded like that's kind of the transition of uses is more natural.
It's a common transition to go from a major street, such as Federal, from commercial to a higher density residential to a single family residential. The planning trend that's been happening, and which probably influenced going to a mixed use designation in this case, is more mixing of uses. So you have people on the streets walking from their home to their place of employment or to their place of coffee. You typically see that more successful in the more urban areas of a city, such as in Westminster, the downtown areas, TOD, maybe Church Ranch, Brook Hill, those places. That's where the market is driving that kind of stuff. So my reference to this being, the density is the same in the mixed use as what's being proposed tonight. The only thing that's being pulled out is the odd thing for this more suburban area was the commercial element. But in terms of a transition of uses, when you look at this particular intersection, you have St. Mark Church, which is considered a place of assembly from a land use standpoint, and you have a restaurant, which is considered commercial, transitioning to, in this particular case, our understanding is a 3-story, which is a very common model for apartments adjacent to single-family residential. You see that throughout the metro area, 3-story apartments next to single-family residential. What you don't always see is, to add on to that, is mixed use, which might have 1-story parking structure perhaps, or retail, and then 4 stories residential above it, directly abutting residential. That could be a possible outcome with the mixed use designation. Because when you mix uses, you have to get more density intensity. Folding in that commercial, you have to go higher on residential, or folding in that parking structure to accommodate both the retail and the residential on that size site.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of teed me off for what was my next question. R36 is hard for me to picture. Can you give me an example in Westminster of apartment that is R36 to help me with context?
I would like to see if maybe Dave Downing or Jenny might be more familiar with the developments throughout the city.
As a starting point, I can mention that Environ's just down the street. Their apartments are R18, so that's half of it, but Jenny?
In terms of more recent develops, I believe that the Sync 36 project between the Westminster Promenade and Circle Point is an R36 designation.
And do we have within the city already R36 that abuts to R8? We're not aware. Okay.
Let me get that on the record. I was not on speaker. We're not aware of that particularly.
Okay. I apologize. I did not know I would have that question. We heard... Sorry, a lot of my questions have already been answered through the mayor being so diligent capturing as they came in. We did heard some assertion that there is no unmet need of affordable housing in this area because Federal Heights offers ample affordable housing. I know we have done a housing study. Does that play out? Does that seem accurate? I thought we had a fairly significant number of, unmet need for affordable housing in the city.
Ms. Grafton, you want to come back? Go ahead and introduce.
Sure. So again, Jenny Grafton, Housing Policy and Development Manager. I think where the common misunderstanding occurs is between housing that's maybe offered on the market at a lower price point versus something that's actually designated as affordable housing through a more formal development process, wherein there are certain requirements for preserved long-term affordability commitments, which is exactly what this type of development would be. Anyone who receives low-income housing tax credits is committing to an affordability period that is monitored by the federal government. So that is what we're looking at here. And I'm sorry, the question before that, there was a 2-part aspect to it. Oh, the housing needs assessment?
Yeah, the housing needs assessment that we did.
So that was completed in 2016, and we were showing at that time the need, even if we did not lose any existing affordable units within the city, that there was still an unmet gap of roughly 3,500 units that we would want to build over time.
Okay. And then my last question for you, what is 80% AMI?
Now, I don't have my calculator in front of me, so if somebody else could run that quickly, it would be 80% of $92,800. 73,600.
Okay, so folks that would qualify for this in the upper echelon would be making 73,000?
Correct, for a family of four.
For a family of four, okay.
Or household. That would be the maximum end of the
Right.
range.
And I guess to be fair, what is 40%? I don't know who just did the calculation.
I can let our developer provide the more specific price points.
Jordan Zielinski, the four-person 80% AMI is $74,240. Which other ones did you have questions on?
I just wanted the 40%, yep.
The 40% AMI for a family of four is $37,120.
And so these are families of four. These aren't four buddies that have gotten together, right? These aren't four adults. These are families. Is that correct?
Typically correct. The measure is whoever the income earners are, their total collective income for that household, for that unit, cannot exceed that amount.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I have maybe a few more questions, but I'll cede at this item.
Just go ahead.
That's okay.
Are there other council members who have questions? All right. Mr. Gurman, I'm going to go back to John. If you got something, go ahead before I start.
I guess procedurally, I have a question. Why are we voting on all three of these parcels together? I mean, is there a way to divide them out? Because there's a big difference between what we're doing with Wishbone and the water tower versus the development that we're talking about.
They were combined in the way it was structured. If you think about it in terms of nuts and bolts, that's how it was put together. Motion could be made to, for example, approve two of the three, or one of the three, or none of the three, for example.
And then I have a question. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate that. And then I know that we've done affordable housing where it's more R8 or townhome related. Is that feasible in this property? Is it not big enough or too big, or what would be R8? Because I know South Bradburn, they're doing townhomes there, 4 units. Why couldn't that type of a affordable housing model be used here?
So Jenny Grafton. I'll start the answer, and then it may be appropriate for our developer to continue it. So we're always looking at the cost of development to see if something is financially viable. In the case of the townhomes you're referencing in historic Westminster, that is land that we would be looking at actually donating, so there would be no land cost to the developer. In this case, this is land that was purchased in a private party transaction. I don't know the actual purchase price of the land, but I'm sure the developer could articulate that. So that's always a balancing act, is how many units can be built and still be financially viable in the total cost of development of the project.
And did I hear properly, or correctly, I should say, that we don't have other examples of R36 next to R8 in this type of model? Did I hear that?
What I said is we're not aware of that tonight. If we had more time, and we can do some research, but we certainly have, here comes Dave Downey, we certainly have multifamily, 3-story adjacent to residential in the city. I couldn't tell you specifically what that density was, 36.
Mr. Downing?
Dave Downing from city staff. I think the only example we could think of is the very new Highland Village development located on the west side of Sheridan at about 96th Avenue. There's a great mix of densities in that area. I guess off the top of my head, I can't remember if there's an R36 right next to a single family. Is that what you were asking?
R8.
Yeah, R8.
R8. Yeah. So what?
I think in fact there are
R8. That particular property. What are the designations there? been through there, but do we know? I'm trying to visualize.
So we have R36, we have certainly R8. I believe we have R18 there also.
Okay.
I don't think we have R3.5. We might have. I guess I'm not positive about 3.5. It's virtually every residential category, all in one large area. But and again, I can't remember off the top of my head if they're right next to each other. But
what's the acreage of that particular whole development versus 6 acres we're talking about here?
Oh, the whole
Because
development.
it was planned that way. It was planned to have 36.
Absolutely it was.
8.
Absolutely it was.
This wasn't, right? So what's the acreage of the whole?
At Highland Village?
Yeah, roughly, like your guess.
I would guess probably, 50 acres? You think it's 50 acres?
Okay.
50 acres is...
Roughly.
Nobody's making eye contact with me, so I'm going to say 50
acres.
acres.
Sorry.
So I guess I'm the expert on that. 50 acres.
Yeah, that's, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the density going into this area is really concerning me, and so is the traffic. And that's where I'm having a hard time coming to a yes on this, because I'm stuck on those two things. And so I'm wondering, is there a way that we could slow our process down a little bit and go back and reevaluate this traffic situation? Because that is my number one concern, is I'm looking at the traffic in this neighborhood, and I've driven this neighborhood, I've walked it, I have friends that live in it, and I'm going, I know it's hard to get into this neighborhood, and I know it's hard to get out if you're making a right turn out, or a left turn out, or a left turn in. I know it's very, very challenging. And then I am struggling a little bit with the density of the area, mostly that I feel like the proposed development doesn't actually fit the area very well. I happen to live over by the other high-density area that everybody's been referring to it, over by the promenade, and honestly, as a resident of that area, nobody was really excited when those went in, but I talked to somebody just this morning who said, that didn't turn out so bad. So I understand the frustration up front. I also know that sometimes things work out okay in the end. But this one is right next to residents. That one is not. That one is actually across the street. And that makes a difference to me. It backs up to the railroads. It's right next to the bowling alley and kind of where the commercial end is. And then the residents, the single income or single home residents, are across the street. It's a very big highway. There's actually a little hill there. It kind of buries it a little bit. This one is like right smack backing up to these residents, and I'm having a really hard time getting through that. What I do like about this is that it is affordable housing, which is just so desperately needed in this city, in this community, and so I'm really straddling a fence right now, because I'm going, I want affordable housing, and I think this might be a good place, but I like the idea of it being a senior affordable housing. I like the idea of it being a little bit less residence density, maybe an R16 and R8. I can so get on board with that a little better. I am just struggling with the R36 and the traffic part. So that's where I'm sitting tonight, and I am a very for affordable housing person. I really believe that as a community we need to pay attention to helping everyone and being mixed use. That is why I chose Westminster as a place to live, because I knew that was part of the vision and part of the mission. But this project is really concerning me. So that's where I'm at, and I just wanted to be very clear and transparent where I'm sitting and how I'm trying to get there, because I can see all sides of this.
Mr. Tripp.
Mayor, thank you. I'd like to ask the city attorney a procedural question. I can see us struggling a little bit with this here. David, is there an option for the council to table this with a request for additional information tonight, or do they need to act yea or nay on this tonight?
to Ms. Parker. Thank you. We're in agreement. I'd recommend a continuance to a date certain. That way, the notice that's already been provided to the public and those that are in attendance tonight will have clear direction as to what date the item would come back on.
Thank you. On that basis, I'd just suggest then maybe an option you might consider is to make sure we have your questions this evening and that we can try to assemble all those. I think we probably have the context of some of them, but I just want to make sure, if you choose to, that you maybe begin to focus on that and providing us the kind of questions you need to be able to come to conclusion on this.
Okay. Mr. Demott, I'm going to finish up council comments before we get everything that they want to know about on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's kind of in the same line, my question, as some of what we've heard. So when you talk about characteristics, I'm particularly looking at number 7 of the items that we need to meet in order to make the change. So I think Councilor Voles pointed out that the example you guys used was kind of planned out that way. So I'm kind of having a hard time matching that. But that aside, I mean, I understand this was planned for this type of density before. So one could argue, that could go up there today. But when I'm looking at what you guys had put in your findings on 7, I want to read the second sentence. It says the land is easily accessible, generally flat, and will lend itself to future development. So we've heard a lot of concern about it not being accessible, both from staff as well as the public, in regards to the fact that we don't feel that CDOT's ever going to come to the table. So I'm trying to understand the spirit in what that finding on number 7 is, so that I understand it. Because to me, when I read that, it's just conflicting what I heard tonight. Mr. German?
It really does come down to our attempt at if you will, the apples to apples comparison. Again, we were always looking at this not from the standpoint of what the site would look like, because that's a future discussion that we're going to have here at a future meeting. It was not how the site would be constructed, how it would be laid out, what would be there, what wouldn't be there. It was always about mixed use versus R36. So if you imagine those two in their most extreme forms, and again, keeping everything else equal, the R36 is a lesser, if you will, impact scenario than the mixed use. So from that perspective, it maintains and you're right, maybe easy was not the best choice of word, but it maintains its best reflection between those two choices with the R36 designation. And it is important, and we do want to stress that we still, assuming council decides, hey, we want to approve this evening, we still have to go through the entire site design, which is if you will, the ODP, the official development plan, and the PDP, the preliminary development plan. That will also come before you. And there may be all kinds of new, issues and concerns and pluses and minuses that we have to talk about at that point. This is really just, this is the preliminary step of saying, hey, faced with R36 and mixed use, we think R36 is the better choice. That's all we're doing.
I think that's a fair point. I'm glad you brought up the point, because we've gotten really into details here tonight, and I know that that would have to get fleshed out. So I think that's important for everyone to understand. I guess the other question I have is, as I listen to you, because I understand your comparison, and if I listen to how you compared it, it makes a lot of sense. I guess what I'm trying to understand too is, do we know what this was before the 2013 comp plan change, and why they decided? Because there's been other areas where we've turned things down because it wasn't in one of the focus areas, and so the density didn't fit. And for me, I know one of them was more around like utilities and water ability to deliver water and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to understand like how it even got there. And I mean, I understand if I look at your comparison, but I suppose if I look at even mixed use with some of the concerns, it doesn't fit. So I'm trying to understand some of that historically as well.
Sure, and fair points, absolutely. The original designation before the mixed-use designation, I would be remiss if I said original because I'm not absolutely sure it was the original, but the previous designation before mixed use was retail commercial, which is the current designation of the water tower site and the hopefully future designation of the Wishbone restaurant site. It's a much less intense designation. What was happening, though, over the history, if you will, that was being looked at the time when that decision was made, was that the site was stagnant. Now, there was no development interest in that site as a retail commercial type of opportunity. The planners involved in that analysis, they looked at it, the focus groups looked at it, the public comment, the whole kit and caboodle. They looked at it and they said, you know, this thing has a presence on Federal Boulevard. People can see it. And there may be some opportunities that are achieved if we give it a mixed-use designation. I think we have to kind of keep in mind also that the idea with mixed use isn't necessarily that it gets built to its highest, most impactful self. Mixed use could have easily been something like we saw at Bradburn, where you have some live work units right there toward the entrance. I believe it's off of Rain, where there are two-story buildings. There's not very many buildings. There's lots of open area around them. Mixed use doesn't have to be, a hugely intense downtown urban environment. But that was the thought process. Say, if we give that designation, maybe we can see something else like that achieved. But there's a risk, right? So when you say, hey, let's put mixed use there, one of the things that those former planners had to think about at that time was, hey, what could end up there? And I think the thought was, we probably won't see anybody coming forward with a downtown, in 6 acres. That heavily super intensive use. So again, that's, I think, what went into the thought process. They were probably thinking we have more opportunities, more things can happen, different kinds of things can develop there. We might get an office maybe, or mixed with some retail, something more minor. But of course, that's what the site has now, and so that's where we're left.
Great. Well,
Can I just add to that?
Sure.
Mr. Goodman did speak with the prior project manager of that comp plan to have this analysis to present this evening today. So it wasn't just speculation. It was just having a conversation with that project manager about the thought process.
But I'd say that is one of the benefits of having people stay here at the city so long, that you have connections and have been here through some of it. So I appreciate you going through the mind reading and crystal ball questions I know we throw at you guys in these type of situations, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Mr. Voles, I'm going to ask you to hold for just a second. Mr. Tripp, we have staff that's sitting by waiting for an executive session later tonight. Can that executive session be delayed?
Yes.
All right, let's let that staff go home and, good. Okay. Then, Council, I want to make you aware, we have 20 minutes left in our allowable time limit without an extension. I want to get at least to a decision of whether or not we're going to table this one, which I think is probably going to be the recommendation I'm going to come forward with. And then we still have the rest of the business that we got to get done tonight. Anything else after that, I think, can be delayed. Public we'll delay both of those to a later date. Mr. Voles, go ahead with your question so we make sure we get everything.
Okay, so my question would be, I would support, because I have many concerns, and I have probably more concerns now than when we started, but if we table this to date certain, which I would support, can we still take those other two properties out, the Wishbone and the water tower, and act on those? Or is there any reason? Does that hurt the other property in any way to decouple those? Or the moving forward on those?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think I would have to defer to Mr. Frankel because of the way the ordinance is written. I don't know that. And that might be something
Well,
he's not prepared for either.
But if it's easier, we'll just do all three later, right? I don't see a reason to keep them waiting. You know, the other, but.
There is a clause in
There's
the-
nothing else tied into these that those two couldn't wait. Because they're not going to proceed with anything unless this one does.
Okay.
Because the other one changes a request by the city, and the other one is coming from Wishbone.
Yes, sir.
They're not planning any type of development stuff there.
That is correct. There is a clause on the ordinance for this that says if it doesn't, if the council decides to act, we make the change from mixed use to R36. If it doesn't develop as affordable housing, it's like it never happened. It reverts. So we get back to square one. So just on the, if you will, the St. Mark Village piece.
Right. Any other questions of staff or the developer this time before we make any kind of consideration of continuing this? Because I want to try to get as much information in front of them so they know what to respond to when they come back.
Question. My understanding is where traffic and circulation is really explored more in depth is in the ODP process. Is that correct? And at this process, we're specifically making almost a binary choice between the most appropriate use as being R36 or mixed use, recognizing that mixed use has a spectrum of densities, but one that was contemplated was the same exact density but with a mandated then retail component.
That is absolutely correct and well stated.
Okay, so that the actual choice for us tonight is to downzone this to something that is less intensive.
Yes, and specifically down designate because we're
Right. So as a landowner, I have a higher intensity use. I'm wanting to downzone it. I just want to make sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, council, any last comments or questions? I want to try to wrap it up if not.
Mayor, there won't be a chance to really Q&A on what it is you're looking for before the action is taken at the next meeting. So I just want to make absolutely sure that we've got all questions from you that you'll want us to have answered by the time this goes back on the agenda, that we're not missing anything.
Well, I think by now, I think just about everybody's had all the comments that you've given from the council and what you've heard from the citizens as well. So I want to make sure that we review the tape and recording from the staff standpoint, pick up everything you can and be prepared for anything that we haven't answered tonight. And also to potentially reiterate some of the answers we have provided tonight so that we try to make sure everybody has an equal playing field to come back. My experience, and I think I'm the one that's been down with CDOT, and I agree with Mr. Downing and Mr. Klein both. I have seen no willingness by CDOT to allow that left turn in there because of the street, just a catty corner across from there, and especially after they added in the car wash. The only other one is potentially, for me, is that green court piece coming in, being there. But I think that in case then throws in, do we have an idea at this point of what that development on the old Holly Park site is going to do? I don't need an answer tonight, but you've got to throw in the expectation that we've done a deal with that group here as a city for the development of that Holly Park site. We need to see that one as well. Because with Green Court coming in, yeah, it gives you an option, but then you take 97th, that always goes all the way out through the environs, which is a 20 to 25 mile an hour speed limit because of the residential piece in there. Then you got the big dip in the road just the other side of the Lowell. Those pieces need to, I need a little bit more clarity of that. I'm not saying we're going to get anywhere with federal. To me, that's just no longer in the question. It's just been beat to death with 3 executive directors of that group, and they're not willing to budge on that. What is in my mind is that taking the commercial out doesn't change what it's zoned for already. But we can already put in that amount of density in the residential unit today without changing anything. But what, to Ms. McConnell's standpoint, if we were to go in with the commercial mix as it's zoned today, we're probably looking at podium buildings with ground floor parking, or ground floor retail with anywhere from 3 to 5 stories of residential, very similar to what we're doing at the downtown, in that site. The only exception is there's no demand for commercial on that site. So, so I'm having a little bit of a struggle with trying to figure out how we're going to deal with the taking out of a commercial part. We're really not changing the residential aspect of it at all, because it's already there. And if the owner decided to develop under those guidelines, we have no reason not to just push it through, because it's already zoned for that, and it would not be a landlord change. I know the Loki family very well. I've known them for years, and I'm one of the people that's in that restaurant on a regular basis. It's got some of the best fried chicken around. I just wish you'd get cream gravy. So, I don't know what it is with the chicken. On public record, I'm still asking Mark and them to go get some cream gravy. But I don't see that, from my history with the family, is there's no desire to do anything different than what they have there today. I think to Mr. Volz's point, they are a part of trying to fix that so it stays in that commercial zoning. The other part is the water tower site, which is the city, so there's no gain for separating these out, and I'm not even sure if it's worth dealing with. But I think there's enough questions in this council's mind tonight that is, people are not clear enough, they're not comfortable enough making a decision based on what we know without some additional input. So I'm going to ask the council to continue this hearing. My question is when we have another full council, because we're going to be missing a council member at least the next one, which is a study session. Do we have a full council at the first meeting in July?
Jenny, are you here?
Okay. What I would recommend of Mr. Tripp, if this works out fine, if it doesn't, give me a better date, but I would like to see this continue until the first council meeting in July, since we know we've got a full council that night. What about the staff? Does that give you enough time? It's roughly 2 weeks. With the exception you got a holiday in here.
Are there any issues with the developer in terms of the developer's timing?
Jordan Zielinski, there are substantial issues with the timing. The project was awarded tax credits in 2017. The private activity bonds, which are the financing mechanism used to construct the community, expire on December 27th of this year. The moratorium put about a 9-month delay to the project, and we are trying to move mountains on the design team to uphold the schedule and meet that time frame. So it has an impact. I'm not sure that impact is relevant when taking into account community concerns. So it is what it is.
So you're asking us to look at 2 weeks versus 4 weeks. I'll interpret that.
That would be lovely if you could.
Okay.
I know one of the things that we looked at, because this was caught up in the moratorium, which also added that, and then we did an exception to the moratorium to allow this to continue forward. So yeah. I'm like you, I'm thinking 2 weeks is the worst we should do.
Okay. Well, we'll do our best to meet, to answer all your questions as thoroughly as we can within 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Council, I need a motion to continue this to a date certain, Mr. DeMont.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move to continue this hearing till July 8th.
Ms. Scully?
Second.
Okay, I'll do this on a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to continue this till July the 8th, signify by aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will continue this hearing till July the 8th. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not done. Doesn't mean you have to come back and testify again, because I will not open the public hearing again. We're going to continue on with this, but you are more than welcome to come back, and I encourage you to come back. But I will not reopen public testimony. We're going to try to get all the information out to you through the staff report that will be available to you on the city website the Wednesday before the council meeting. If you have public comments, you can come back and tuck in the public comment period of 5 minutes at the beginning, but I won't open up the public hearing portion of this again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing on to item 10B. This is adoption of resolution number 16. And before we do that, I'm going to ask the council to go ahead and approve a 30-minute extension so we can get through the rest of the agenda. We may not need all of it, but I know we won't get done in 10 minutes. So at this point, Mr. DeMont, I need a motion to continue.
I move to continue an extra 30 minutes beyond 10:30, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I have a second.
Second.
I have a motion, and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will now move to a completion time of no later than 11 p.m. First item up again is, back up now.
10B.
We're on item 10B. This is resolution number 16. Mr. DeMott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 16 and the 2019 strategic plan for the city of Westminster.
Ms. Seitz?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote. If there are no comments. Seeing none. Ms. Parker?
Atchison.
Hang on a minute. I got to get my page back again. There we go. Yes.
DeMott.
Yes.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Seitz.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Vols.
Yes.
Motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item C1. This is allocation of funds for the police department, and I told you we'd get there tonight. All right. Ms. Parker, I have you up, but I don't think you want to be up, do you?
No, sir.
Good. Mr. DeMott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the reallocation of $580,000 for computer-aided dispatch report management upgrades project into the computer-aided dispatch records management system replacement project.
Ms. Mankey.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on item C1? Seeing none, all in favor, please use your lights. And the motion carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item C2. This is execution of a contract for replacement for computer aid or design. C2, I'll get there in a second. Mr. DeMott, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract for implementation of the replacement computer-aided dispatch records management system with Central Square Technologies for the total expenditure not to exceed $2,446,593.
Ms. Seitz?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions from council? Seeing none, this is also a vote with your lights. And the motion also carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item D1, expenditure of contract for utility metering solutions. Ms. Mankey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with the responsive low bidder utility metering solutions for the replacement of small meters, radio transmitters, and related infrastructure in the amount of $12,250,690 and authorize a contingency of $1,300,000 for a total authorized expenditure not to exceed $13,550,690.
Ms. Seitz?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on item D1? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's vote with your lights as well. And this motion also carries on a 7-0 vote. Next item up is the authorization of an amendment to the contract for J&T Consulting, item D2. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the city manager to execute an amendment to the engineering contract with J&T Consulting Incorporated for project management and construction services in the amount of $373,430 and authorize an additional contingency of $17,361. This amendment increases the total authorized expenditure with this contractor from the original amount of $48,500 to an amount not to exceed $439,291.
Ms. Mankey?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions from council? vote with your lights. And we have a 7-0 vote. Next item up is item 10E, and this is for Flowcam Cyano Fluid Managing. Ms. Sites?
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I move based on the recommendation of the city manager to determine that the public interest will be best served by authorizing the sole source purchase of Flowcam Cyano from Fluid Imaging Technologies, Inc. for a total cost not to exceed $80,000.
Mr. Demott?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. So any questions or comments from council? Not, this is also a vote with your buttons, please. And the motion is carried on a 7-0 vote. Next item up is item 10F. This is for Automation Control Solutions. Ms. Scully?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move based on the recommendation of the city manager to find that the public interest will be best served by authorizing a negotiated purchase of products and supplies from sole source providers CPI Automation and Control Solutions. Am I on the right one? In an amount not to exceed $150,000 in 2019 to replace worn out and obsolete programmable logic controllers and other equipment used in supervisory control and data acquisition networks throughout the water and wastewater utility.
Mr. Bowles?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there questions or issues from council? Seeing none, please use your light. And this motion passes on a 7-0 vote. Moving on to old business. This is the Councilor's Bill number 24 on second reading. I'll get there in a second. Ms. Sites?
Thank you. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 24 on second reading, providing for supplemental appropriation of funds to the 2019 Sales and Use Tax and General Funds budget.
Ms. Manking?
Thank you. A second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for Council's Bill number 24. Is there any questions or comments from council? Not, Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote.
Demott.
No.
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Sights.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Bowles.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes. All right, it's not mine. I need one more light. There we go. Okay. This motion passes on a 6-1 vote. Next item on the agenda is Council's Bill number 25.
I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 25 on second reading, amending the Westminster Municipal Code to create the Department of Policy and Budget.
I have a motion and a second, Mr. Bowles.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second on Council's Bill number 25. Is there any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, this is also a roll call vote. Ms. Parker?
Haney.
Yes.
Mankey.
Yes.
Sights.
Yes.
Scully.
Yes.
Vols.
Yes.
Atchison.
Yes.
Demott.
No.
Okay, motion passes on a 6-1 vote. All right, boys and girls, we are at the end of the regular business. We have continued what did we miss? Okay. So I think it's still a 6-1 vote on that one. That took care of everything on the agenda. We have continued the executive session that was planned on the downtown Westminster. We've also continued the report on the boards and commission, and I will give you the report on the transportation product at the study session next week. We'll add those other 2 items to next week's agenda. One thing I will remind council is we have continued the hearing. We are still in the middle of that hearing. Conversations or contact with citizens or people on this subject is still forbidden. We're still in the section where we're just continuing the hearing, but it doesn't open it up. You can have public comment. So, reminder of that. Then Ms. Parker did not get a chance to distribute this, but this is another letter opposition that we received late today, so I'll leave that for the public record. Council reminding you do have a packet that was left with you at your tables earlier tonight that has information also for you to consider when we have the hearing next time. With that said, it is 10:30.